Anna Hoffman.
Hey friends, I'm Nikolai.
Hi, I'm Mustafa Turaman.
Hi, I'm Tanya Janka.
Hello.
And I'm excited to be the speaker at Azure Summit 2021.
It's a fantastic event that will be 11 days live streaming,
where more than 100 speakers from all over the world.
I'm excited to speak at Azure Summit about Power BI and Synapse Analytics.
And I'm going to talk about security.
And also a Microsoft MVP for Azure.
I'm speaking at Cloud Summit about automated release of .NET application.
And the best part is that this is a free event.
Come join me live at Learn TV on September 17th.
Come join me live on Learn TV on September 14th.
Come join me on Learn TV on the 14th of September this year.
A bunch of other Microsoft and community speakers.
So if you want to learn how to secure Azure, come to my talk.
Join us, it will be a lot of fun.
See you there.
See you there.
See you there.
See you there.
All right, welcome back everyone to part 2, day 8, Cloud Summit 2021. As always, I'm your host, Stephen Simon, and we are back once again with a break of 30 minutes. I've been looking into the comments. You all have been very, very kind to each other, and that's all I would want you all to continue is to follow code of conduct. And always remember the 3 contests that we have. The first one is the live contest, that whenever you ask a question to the speaker or drop or share your thoughts in the comment, please use #Cloud Summit so that we go ahead and pick winners from the live comment towards the end of the part. Also, we always have a contest running on LinkedIn and Twitter, so feel free to go ahead and take a selfie, screen grab, and post on LinkedIn and Twitter and tag us at Cloud Summit Live with the hashtag #Cloud Summit, and we'll make sure that we pick the winner towards the end of the day. That was a very quick intro, and it I sounded like a radio jockey, to be honest. So having said that, let's go ahead and invite our very first speaker of part 1. He is Aditya. Aditya is a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador. He was there the other day hosting the student track, and I think he's the only second student who is speaking in the developers track after Rashika Karki. So yeah, he is a complete rock star. He does Twitter Spaces. He's everywhere. He makes amazing videos, content around the internet, host. I think India is one of the best hackathons for students. And today he's going to talk about related to Azure Functions and Twilio. So let's go ahead and welcome the community rock star, Aditya Oberai. What a surname. Ooh. No, so welcome, Aditya. Welcome to Cloud Summit 2021 once again.
Hey.
Long time no see. Can you not hear me?
Sorry, I think we lagged for a second. Not sure if it's just me.
Let me quickly do my speed test. My speed test looks pretty good. It is over 130 Mbps. Never mind. Aditya, I see you're sharing your screen. I have added it to the stream. Everybody can see it, and next 25 minutes is all yours.
Yeah, I believe that should be good. Thank you so much for that. Hi, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. It's lovely to see all of you here in the live chat right now. And a big thank you to Simon here and the Cloud Summit team for having me over. So I know they've given a lovely introduction already, that absolutely fantastic clip, but let me go ahead and tell a little bit about myself before I jump into the session. So yeah, I am Aditya Oberai. I'm currently a DevRel engineer at AppWrite, an open source backend as a service. I have been active in student tech communities for the last couple of years, and I'm also active with quite a few organizations beyond class, beyond work, as a Gold Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, a Twilio champion, as a hackathon coach at Major League Hacking, and a member of the .NET Foundation. In case any of you want to reach out to me, you can always do so at any point of time via Twitter. That's my handle up there. You can find me at any point of time. So yeah, let's talk a little about what we're building in this fun session today. I know the title sounded interesting. I hope it said fake a phone call. But let's really understand what we're doing right now. So we're going to make an API that will fake a phone call to any number that you want. It's an API that you call, you send the number there as a GET or a POST request, and it's going to send a phone call with a preset text. So how this is going to happen essentially for this particular API is that we will be using an Azure function there, which will then call Twilio programmable voice, and that's what gives the call to our mobile phone. Now, I'm sure some of you must have heard about Azure functions, a few, of course, Twilio, but I'm telling you, this is going to be a really fun session. It's going to get hands-on very soon. We're going to enjoy it because this little idea, if you're stuck at any gatherings or meetups, and some of us, we just don't like to talk. It can be really helpful when you try to get out of a few tricky situations. So it's a really fun little app that allows you to use this really amazing serverless offering of Azure, another amazing communications as a service platform, Twilio, and really just experiment and try around. It's something I first did at a hack, and I really wanted to come and bring along this experience for all of you. So now, before we get building, there's a little that I would like to share with you about the technologies that we're going to be using as well. I think it'd be great, that before we kind of jump into building, just let's understand what we're working with. All right. So what are Azure functions? Azure functions are a serverless solution that allow you to write less code, maintain less infrastructure, and save on costs. It's a really nifty little tool that we have on Azure that allows us to deploy our code. It lets us get it running without us having to really worry about deploying and maintaining servers. So the cloud infrastructure there provides all the necessary resources to keep your applications running. So a big perk of this is that as a developer, when you have certain APIs, that are event driven or that run from time to time, that don't need to be perpetually running on a server, this kind of lets you allocate resources at the time of calling, and that way you can get these solutions running a lot quicker. It's a lot cheaper as well because you're not running that for the entire duration. So it's a really helpful tool. I love working with Azure functions. I hope I'll be able to share some of that with you today as well. Next thing that we're going to be using is Twilio programmable voice. This is an API that Twilio offers that allows you to create custom call experiences with a variety of offerings like speech recognition, call recording, conference calling, and more. We're going to be using one specific aspect of it, one of the simplest, that is making an outbound call. I personally love working with Twilio as a developer because it is very friendly to work with. We have SDKs available in a number of languages. I believe now they have an open API spec open as well. And that being said, they are their documentation is one of the most developer friendly I've ever found. So I honestly love working with Twilio, and I hope as I build live with you folks, you will be able to see and understand what I mean when I say developer friendly. All right. So moving forward, those are the two primary technologies that we have. But before we jump into actually building, there are a few important links that I would love for you all to check out. These are links that are gonna, these are resources that we're gonna need during the session that I'm gonna be using. The first, of course, is Azure. Considering it's an Azure function, it would be great if you have an Azure subscription. You can actually get it for free from the link I've shared. It offers, I believe, up to 200 USD for about 12 months. The next tool we're going to be using is Visual Studio Code, which is a beloved code editor of a lot of us. It's available for free, so you all can just hop over to the link on screen and check it out. Thirdly, I'm going to be building my solution, my Azure function with .NET. .NET, of course, is a cross-platform developer platform that allows you to build for a variety of a huge number of platforms. You can build for mobile, you can build for web, you can build games. There's AI/ML development you can do. You can build for IoT. So there's just so many platforms .NET targets. It's really a lovely skill to have around you. If you're into development. I personally like working with .NET, but that being said, functions support a variety of languages. So feel free to work with another language that you might prefer. The logic is really going to remain the same. The next tool is a little more specific to Azure Functions, that is the Azure Functions core tools. Now, this is something you will need if you're locally testing your functions. We're going to be using functions, of course, as we locally test before we deploy our solution, right? And lastly, of course, Twilio. Since Twilio is a communications as a service platform, you're going to need to have access to it. If you use the link on the screen, you can actually get about $10 worth of free credits. So please feel free to go ahead and get yourself those credits. Now it's demo time. So I'm just gonna take my screen share off for a second so that I can bring up VS Code so that we can start building, right? It'll just take me a second. And in the meantime, another thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be shifting our folks over here to my right. Now, this way, I'm going to be working on my screen, of course. So, I'm going to be keeping you here just along with me, not too far away. And that way we can keep working together while I build and show you how I would like to get this done. So I hope that's all right with all of you. Yes. Okay, my screen should be up now. I guess it should be up. Yes, that's it. All right. So that's VS Code for you. Very basic little view. I'm sure this is something you've seen from time to time. Now, the first things first, what you got to do is get yourself the Azure Functions extension from the VS Code store. So, you can just click on extensions here. And what you have to do is search for Azure Functions. It should show up to your search very quickly. So that way, the moment you click here, it's going to be there visible for you. All you got to do is install this. What this is going to do is it's going to give you an extra little tab here on the sidebar with Azure. And within that, you will see something similar here that says functions. Now, I have app service here as well because I have that particular extension. But just go ahead, get functions. That's more than necessary for this particular session. Let me just close this. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to create. Okay, I just realized that I need to log in to Azure. But anyway, that's something we can get to later on. So what I want to do is I want to create a new project for myself. I had a little directory that I created earlier. You can create it at any directory that you want. This function, well, we are going to use C# in this case. It shows recently used for me because I regularly work with C# and .NET. You can select any language out of these that you want. Just be sure it's good to check compatibility with Twilio. But from what I know, JavaScript, Python, Java, all of these have support. So you should be good to go. So with this, it's going to create a little project for us. Now, for our case here, I prefer using .NET Core 3. It is in long-term support. So I'm going to be going ahead with that. All right. Since our function is one that we want to call from time to time based on our use case, we're going to use the HTTP triggered function. So this essentially works on your, you can use the get and post REST, our HTTP requests. These formats are common. These are ones that we use. So it should be fairly easier to understand. All right. Our function is going to be called fake call func. It's a long name, but I just kind of want to keep it like that for now. Or maybe, let's just keep it fake call. That's good enough. For the namespace, I'm comfortable with company.function. You can change it to whatever you want. Out of access rights, we're going to keep it anonymous for now, because since it's a function that we're using just for our case, it's all right. Even if we don't have a separate access right setup here, we can just go ahead with anonymous for now. So once I go through all of these, it's going to create a new project for me. And as you see this lovely little tool here, it's a scaffolding tool that creates a basic Azure function for you. And this is a function that has get requests, post requests. It accepts those, and it responds based on whether the function comes in with the necessary query. In this case, it's name. I'm going to be changing some of these details, of course, but it's a good idea to understand. It's a great little template there for you to understand. So if you see some of the stuff I'd seen earlier when we were creating this project, you would have seen the function name that I'd said that was fake a call. HTTP trigger is what we had selected. The authorization level was set as anonymous when we were looking at access rights. Get and post are the two main, these are the HTTP request formats that we will work with. You can actually choose to remove either of them, but it's all right. It's not an issue. We don't need to set a separate route for now. This is particularly a little more helpful when you're working with a full stack application with something like static web apps, for example. But for now, we don't need it. Apart from that, rec here is the HTTP request that our function will be receiving, and we have a little logger here there for us. So fairly easy to understand how this function, what information we're getting beforehand when this function is called. All right. And even if I look at this right now, you can see that the log information, this is just a function that logs the string here in front of us. Rec.query allows us to get a get request information. The request body is used in case a post request is sent. So in that case, it deserializes the request. We are dealing with JSON here. So it deserializes that object and extracts the name variable for us if that name is present in the JSON that we receive. And response message here is a response that we would want to send in case, it checks whether the name is null or empty. And if there is some value there, it returns a response that the function was triggered successfully. If not, it has a separate little call as well. So I'm going to be changing some of these details, removing some of them as well. For the first thing, I'm just going to remove this response message for myself. I'm going to keep it null for now. All right. Because this is something we're going to change later, but for now, we're good to go. For the name, I want to change this value to number because I'm going to be dealing with phone numbers here. So I think it's probably just a good idea for me to change this. Going a little manual work. Sorry about that.
Aditya, can you zoom a little bit? Can you zoom a little bit?
Oh, okay. Let me just check. I think this should be a little more visible.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for that call out. So go back, set the number there as well. So yeah, that's a basic setup. It's what this is just doing is if I have a request with the number variable, we're going to get that value stored in this string. Now I'm keeping this as a string because we're going to be keeping the country code there as well, which includes the plus symbol. So that way this helps us. Next up, what I want to do is I want to, install Twilio. So I'm just going to get a new terminal for me. And I'm going to run a .NET command that adds a new package from the NuGet package manager, of course. It uses the NuGet library here. So I'm going to write .NET add package Twilio. And what this is going to do is it's going to get the Twilio SDK, the NuGet package for me. So as you can see, it's getting information from NuGet. This is the Twilio SDK that we're getting here right now. And now, well, it's installed. We've got it here in our function, so we can utilize Twilio. Before we kind of rush into Twilio, what I want to tell is that when we use the Twilio SDK, there are three things that we need. The first thing is, well, a Twilio account SID. The second is an auth token, and the third is a number. So those are things that you can get once you create your Twilio account. You can do so using the link I'd shown in the beginning. I can probably give you a little look of how Twilio's console looks. So that should make things a little easier for you going ahead. So I was already logged in. You're going to see a similar screen once you create your account. So there is my account SID that I had. The auth token is here as well. Please do not show it to anyone else. It's supposed to be a secret. You can purchase a phone number within Twilio. You have enough credits to do that for now. So just make sure that before you start, it's a good idea to buy a number for yourself. And make sure you get one that has calling facility. Like in this case, my phone number has voice, SMS, or MMS facility, so I can use any of these. Be sure to get one with voice. That's specifically what we need for this particular use case. All right. I'm just going to close this for now since I have these saved in a separate file somewhere else. All right. Yep. So normally it's a good practice when you're using any such applications. We like to use environment variables. Functions has inbuilt facility for that. If you have any information saved in local.settings.json here, you can actually add values here and use them as environment variables when testing. That is what we're going to be doing right now. So I'm just going to close this for now. I'm going to be adding two new strings for us. Count SID. Now, I want to use this to get an environment variable with the value account SID. Second thing I want to do is create a little auth token string. I'm sure I shared the relevance of those earlier, so you should be able to understand fairly comfortably how that sort of works. We're going to get the environment variable from here as well. And I'm just going to name this as auth token. These are values we're going to be using from local settings.json. I'm sure, I know you didn't see them right now, but I have them in a separate file, so that's not going to be an issue. For now, that's the good practice. You can have the string saved here as well, but you shouldn't. This is something that helps keep your code secure in case you're sharing, which I'm going to be doing actually later on. At the end, I will be sharing a GitHub repo with this code. So that should help you understand why I'm using environment variables here. The next thing to do is to initialize the Twilio client, but right now you see it can't really find it. Lovely little thing about VS Code, you can just press Control dot. Oops, seems like. Sorry about that. I'm just gonna end that video. This is a mistake I make more often than not, unfortunately, but well. I'm just gonna add Twilio here directly. Let's see where we're kind of. Sorry about that. Just if you could give me a second. I'm having a little worry, so I'm just gonna have a look at my reference. Honestly, I make this mistake far more times than I'd like to. But yeah, it should be able to find Twilio client. That was correct. So I'm not sure why it's not able to kind of add that. Let me just complete the line here. Go ahead and okay, so it kind of took time to catch that, but it did. That was actually correct. So yeah, just happens from time to time. Now, what we need here is the account SID and the auth token that we'd saved. All right. And once we have that, we're actually ready to use Twilio. Okay. So the first thing we're going to set is a var. Var is just used to designate variables. Good thing about, well, C# now, you can actually just use var instead of the exact data type to kind of, declare and initialize your variables. Now I'm going to be using a custom Twilio type called phone number. And what this really does is, I'm actually surprised. What I'm having trouble with right now is, well, Twilio's own types and APIs. So I'm just going to add their references directly. That's exactly where I'm having a little trouble. So I'm just going to add, I think what's happened is that I've had trouble restoring C#'s, well, extension here. I think that happens from time to time. So that's kind of what's happened. But let me just manually add those right now so that we won't have trouble later. Now, these are references you won't ideally have to remember because Visual Studio would typically do the job for you. So don't worry too much about it. All right. But for now, I'm just going to keep these here because I need these values. What I'm going to add here is, I'm going to create a new phone number type. And this is actually a Twilio type that we need. So the package Twilio.types that I kind of added up here, a reference to, is going to be saving a value of the phone number type. Similarly, another type that we would need here is, we would need another number, the number from which we'll be calling. And this is the Twilio number we have, which is why it's necessary to purchase a Twilio number. So for that, we're going to go back to our environment variables. Okay. Get environment variable. And I'm just going to name this as Twilio number. Now, what this would do is, well, this is the number we need to call from. Third thing, we need to call a call resource. That is, we need to use the Twilio SDK and that API, the SDK that we have to create that call as well. So I'm going to create another little variable called var call, and this is going to be of the type call resource. Okay. And what this would essentially do is well, this is what we're using here to create our call. So I'm going to add a function here called resource create. And this is where we need our to, we need our from, and we need to add a little text, of course, that, well, is what, that we hear during the call, right? Now for this purpose, Twilio has its own little markup language called YML. Interesting, but well, what this allows us to do is it allows us to set the response value and what exactly it wants to say. So I'm gonna just go ahead and add that here. For this, we have another new YML type, and this takes in a string as well. In this instance, what we're gonna add is there is a specific format to it. Oops, sorry for the typos. I'm just gonna quickly first add response. Let's close that off. Then the next thing we need within that is another little tag called say. Within say is where we add the text we want it to say when we get a call. So I'm just gonna say, hi there, thanks for testing the fake call function. I think that sounds, and I'm gonna add hope you enjoy Cloud Summit. Nice little call. So yeah. Now when this function is called, what it'll do is it'll essentially make the phone call to me. And the last thing, and probably what I want in my response message, is just the SID from the call. So that, when I get the SID, I know that the call is being made. So I guess we're good at this point. Now I kind of just want to switch over to my, function, just add my settings here just to make that phone call. So I'm just going to take my screen share off for a second. It's going to take just a couple of minutes, but once we're through with this, we can test the function and we're good to go. That's just probably the end of this session here. Well, this demo at least.
Yeah, Aditya, maybe we'd like to wrap soon.
Yeah, it's just going to take a minute for me. Very sorry about that. 1 second. I'm just bringing this over right now. I'm having some weird issues when. Yeah. Okay, I'm just bringing my screen back up because I'm ready to test. So I hope it's visible. Sorry for the slight delays. I had a few issues.
Looks like we lost Aditya. Maybe he lost his internet, but never mind. It was a great session going on from Aditya. I think he has some internet issues. He was talking about Azure functions and how you can use Twilio to go ahead and use both Azure function and Twilio at the same time to imitate on how it would look like a fake phone call. But never mind, we'll have Aditya back sometime soon, maybe towards the end of the day or some other day. He's been very active in the community. But with that, we move to our next session of the day. That's by Grant. Grant is a Microsoft MVP and DevOps advocate at Redgate Software. Their company are the sponsors for this event, so we really appreciate their support towards the community. Redgate is actually very committed towards community and have their own events in the entire calendar. So without any further ado, let's invite Grant to Cloud Summit 2021. Hi, Grant. Welcome to Cloud Summit 2021. You are muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate Grant, you and your entire team. I follow Redgate everywhere, and the commitment that Redgate has towards the community and the way you support it, and also the way you go ahead and started your own ventures and events to support the entire community is absolutely amazing. And we're really thrilled to have you on board. And to be honest, Grant, while we were taking the registration, DevOps was something that people are really looking forward to learn. And so I won't take much of your time. We're going to do chit chat towards the end of the day. I'm going to add your screen to the stream. Everybody can see it. And next 45 minutes is all yours, Grant.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. That was far too kind, but I appreciate it. Hey, you know what? Let's talk DevOps. All right, let's get going. There we go. My name is Grant Fritchey, as I got that really kind introduction. I do work for Redgate Software. And if you want to talk to me after today, this is my contact information. I'm a Microsoft Data MVP, and I'm an AWS community builder. And I'm a bit of a DevOps freak. I really enjoy it. I started doing database automation, oh gosh, about 16 years ago. I was reluctantly dragged to it by a very smart developer who said, no, you want to do what I'm going to show you. And that developer was right, dead on right. I did want to do what they were going to show me. So I now try to bring other people along on the same idea. Automating database deployments is really important. I've been doing it for a very long time. It is possible. It's just a lot of work. But it's not impossible, and it's not too difficult. And we can kind of address it. But like I said, if you have questions after today, please do reach out and get in touch. Now, our agenda today is pretty simple. We're going to talk about Azure DevOps. That's where we're going to spend our time today, is talking about Azure and Azure DevOps. And I want to talk about the tools that are available there and how they can help you do database DevOps. And we're going to talk about ways to control the database with these processes. Now, I'm going to do some short demonstrations showing you how you could possibly set up, say, a continuous integration environment or a QA environment or even a pre-production environment, all within Azure DevOps. And then obviously, once you've done all that, going to production is easy. So we'll kind of step through a bunch of those, and I'll give you the options on why I made choices that I made. It's much more, not so much showing you how these things work as why I chose what I chose, because that's really the trick, because you can do anything. So you have to kind of sit down and think about what it is that you want to do. So let's get going. Now, to level set and talk about DevOps in particular is the importance of what it is. Now, this is my own definition that I came up with after a lot of reading and research, but I think that when you compare it to the Gartner definition or any other definition, any place else you're going to look, this one's just a bit more succinct. The key for me is that it's all about a culture supporting collaboration between people. That's what DevOps is. You don't have to have anyone named as a DevOps individual in your organization. You don't have to be doing DevOps, big capital D, big capital O. All you really need to have is a culture that supports collaboration between people. Now that then allows you to define processes. And then once you've defined processes, you've got a very well-defined process, you automate that process. Ta-da, you're doing DevOps. That's it. That's really all it is. It's not any particular tool set. It is not any particular set of tools. It is not any particular tool. It's not a particular OS. It is all about establishing that culture of collaboration so you guys can talk to one another. That's it. Just find that mechanism that allows you to talk to one another, establish processes, and then automate those processes. And whether or not you call it that, you're doing DevOps. That's it. It's that simple. Now, that said, we do want to mention it is people before process, before tools. If you're just running out and buying tools, you're going to fail. If you don't define good processes, you're going to fail. And if you're not focused on ensuring that your people are communicating to one another, you're going to fail. Now, I've seen a lot of failed DevOps implementations. I hate saying that. It's just awful. But almost everyone dropped the ball on this. They didn't put the people first. They didn't then focus on process and do it all before they worried about toolings. A lot of people went straight to the tools and started work there, and that's just how it went. But looks like something hiccuped. Cool. All right. Are my slides still up? There they go. All right. So even though I said all that stuff about how tools are not that important, tools are not that important, tools are not that important, guess what we're going to talk about today? We're going to talk about tools. But I do always start any kind of talk with DevOps about emphasizing just how important the culture is, because the culture is what's going to make or break you, not the tools. Now, we're going to talk today, specifically the tools, we're going to talk today about our Azure DevOps. And we're going to talk about Azure DevOps in support of database deployments. The database I'm deploying
Grant, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but maybe you have muted yourself. Yeah, perfect.
I did not mute myself, but I see that I was muted. I didn't have to touch the keyboard, so I don't know how.
I don't know what's happening today.
Oh, technology is not easy. That's why we have sessions like this. Is because technology is always a bit of a challenge. But this is what we are going to talk about today: is specifically Azure DevOps, the repos, which is the storage for your scripts or whatever, pipelines, which control the flow, and then artifacts, which are, in this case is going to be SQL. But we're going to talk about that. All right. Here we go. All right, so Azure DevOps. Now, the thing to understand about Azure DevOps is it's not a tool. You say, oh, I'm going to do Azure DevOps. Well, okay, cool. what are you going to do within Azure DevOps? Because it is a big collection of tools. There's a lot of stuff in there. When we get to the demos, you're going to see all of the things that you could be doing with it. Now, we're going to narrow our focus down into just a few little areas. But the thing you have to understand, it is a very, very big collection of tools, and it is focused on management. Not simply management of your code or management of your deployments, but it is management of your applications, your process. You could even use it to manage your people, your bug tracking, all kinds of crazy stuff. We're not going to dig into all of that. There's just so much there. We have to kind of focus in a particular area. So we're going to focus on database deployments. Also understand that that large selection is your first step for security. Now, I'm going to mention security quite a lot because automating your processes and automating your methodologies, especially automating them using a cloud technology, provides a potential for massive security issues. Now, you have to try hard to mess up the security and expose your systems through Azure DevOps, but you can. So we're going to talk just a little bit about it to try to get you guys to not do that, and we'll mention why. All right, cool. So let's start off with the repos. Now, the repos are just where you store your scripts, whatever scripts you're storing, or your applications, whatever your applications are defined as. It's where your code goes. In the old days, we called it version control. Now it's a repository. Doesn't matter. This concept is the same. Whether we're using Git, GitHub, TFS, and by the way, all of these are supported by Azure DevOps. You can put it in Git itself, raw, GitHub directly if you want, and I do use GitHub for a lot of my stuff. Team Foundation Services is still a possibility. Even the older style of repo is available to you, and there are some others. But the key is you want to take advantage of these repos. You want to take advantage of it because if we're talking databases, whether we're talking MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, doesn't matter, every database is code. Because it's code, we should treat it like, I don't know, what's a good word? Code. And what do we do with code? We put code into repos. We put code into version control. We track who made what change. We track what changes were made when, what version applies where. Let's do all of that for databases too. There's no reason why not, because we can. We can put them all through a repository and see what's going on in terms of databases. Yes, I get it. Data is not code. The data inside of a database is not code. But the thing about that is that's our challenge. The database definition language that we're going to use to create a table or alter a view or do anything else within a database, that's all just code. It's the data that we have to work around when we're creating these automation processes. And so it's the data that we have to protect and figure out scripting mechanisms that allow us to do automated deployments, but still provide protection. So yes, the data is not code, but everything else is. So we're going to start to treat it like it's code. We're going to put it in a repository. All right, we'll get to that in the demo, don't you worry. The next thing that we need to talk about are the pipelines. Now, the pipelines is where we are going to implement our process definition. Now, we do absolutely need to start thinking about what our process is, what it is we need it to be, what kind of things we're going to be doing. All of that has to get done up front, because without a process definition, yeah, sure, you can go in here and start playing with these tools and mess around with them, but you're probably going to fail because you're not going to know what you're doing or how you're doing it, and trying to automate the unknown is really hard. Trying to automate it, we just do whatever, whenever. Okay, cool. Automating it's going to do whatever, whenever, and oh my gosh, that's not going to work. So you actually have to have some discipline and some planning and get in front of this. But once you do, we've got pipelines. Now the pipelines are simply doing what a pipe does. A pipe controls flow. Sure, you could put on valves and pumps and all that fun stuff and check valves and all the rest of that stuff. We can get into talking piping if you want to, but the general idea is these things control the flow of the scripts that you need to deploy your databases. Now they work either in the cloud entirely, or they work with on-premises agents. So the example today, I'm going to show you how an agent can be configured to run locally, and you can run them all with agents and get the job done that way. The one thing to think about in the pipelines is that it is the next step in security, because you can set up different pipelines to do different things. You can connect pipelines individually to agents or to groups of agents, and then you can control everything that way so that you're not sweating whether or not things have access or not. You're going to be able to control it. So it is absolutely the next step for security. And I can't emphasize enough just how important security is when you're setting this stuff up, because you're setting up a methodology that's going to allow people to modify your database on the fly. And you might want to make sure it's secure so that you're not letting people do horrible and heinous things to the data that's under your systems, right? That's the key. That data has to still be protected. We can automate everything, but we need to do it in a safe fashion. All right, now when it comes to the pipelines, there is a GUI, and that's what I'm actually going to show today. But if you really, really want to control it, and if you really want to get into programmatic aspects of it, you're going to have to learn some YAML. Now, if you're a straight up developer, you're probably already comfortable with that concept, no big deal. If you're like me, came from a bit more of a DBA background, YAML's a bit of a pain. It's not the end of the world. It's not impossibly hard to learn. It's just, a little bit of a pain. So, okay, great. So I've got to learn a little bit of another language. Fine. YAML is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I know it's supposed to be YAML ain't markup language, even though the original definition was yet another markup language, but it kind of really is a markup language. So it's not that hard. It's JSON, XML, YAML. They're all conceptually the same. You'll be able to pick it up. All right, let's keep going. Finally, what we're going to be generating from our pipeline are artifacts. And the reason we want to generate an artifact is we want to be able to do some SQL, right? We want to be able to spit out some SQL, because that is going to allow us to audit what it is that we did on our deployment and what objects were changed by that script. We're going to be able to take a look at it. And because we're doing it all through source control, it adds the aspect of historical tracking, so we can see what's going on and understand exactly how things are behaving. So it gives us that ability. So the artifacts is the simplest part of the whole thing, because there's just nothing to it. It's a script. Now there's different ways we could output that script. We could output it to build files, to YAML files, to anything, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do it. I'm going to show you an example that just spits out SQL, but there's just a whole slew of different methodologies that you could apply to this. Don't get hung on those details. Focus on your process. Don't worry about it. I can do a million things. Which one do I do? Well, do the one that's going to work for you. And for most of us, a lot of times, just spitting out SQL, that SQL that modifies the schema in Snowflake, or the SQL that modifies SQL Server, that's enough for most of us most of the time. So that's why I use that in the example, just because it's simple and clear. But you can do it a whole lot of ways. All right, just keeping an eye on the time. We're doing just fine, by the way. Plenty of time, because we're going to spend more time in Azure DevOps than talking about Azure DevOps. All right, so finally, we need a database tool. We need a piece of magic, because like I said at the beginning, databases are hard, and databases are hard because of data. And so we are going to have to add one tool to the mix. Generally, these tools fall into two types. They are either state-based or migrations-based. Now, what do I mean? State-based is a tool. Examples could include Redgate SQL Compare, or the IDEA Compare tool, or the data comparison tool inside of SSDT. Any one of these would be a state-based tool for doing these kinds of comparisons. And by that, it means it is looking at the database and a backup, or the database and another database, or the database and your source control system. When you have those two things, you compare them, you identify the differences, and you generate a script. And that script will make up the differences. It will drop a table, create a table, do whatever it has to do to make things match. That's state-based. Now, a migrations approach is stuff like DBUp, Flyway, others, and they are a manifest of changes. Run these scripts in this order. Easy, simple to understand. Now, the strength of state-based is that that comparison that you run is easy to understand, easy to automate, and it generates scripts for you. Yay, big win. But state-based has a couple of big problems. Biggest problem being it doesn't deal well with data, because it's just looking at the objects as objects, and it's looking at the scripts as scripts, and it's saying like, hey, looks like you dropped the table. In fact, what you did was rename the table, but the comparison tool can't tell that. So it's saying, well, look, you've got a new table here, and you got rid of an old table, so I'm going to drop the old table, create the new table for you. Ta-da, win. Oh no, right? We just dropped the table in a production database. Oh no, that's a problem. Migrations, on the other hand, won't hit that issue, because migrations is just going to do the changes you did in the order you did them. And if you renamed a table, the migrations is going to go, hey, rename the table, and keep going. Migrations does have a problem in that it can lend itself towards moving development into your production environment. And what do I mean by that? Well, in development, it's very common for us to change our mind 3 or 4 or 5 or 100 times, maybe even in a day. Add a column, drop a column, change the data type. Nope, change it back. Wait, hang on, let me try that again. Nope, drop that, add it. And if I've checked all of that into source control, that could all then get moved up to production. And let's say we have a 100 million row table, and we add a column, drop a column, add a column, drop a column. Wow, there's going to be problems, right? There's going to be some issues in that. No matter what system we're running under, that's going to be an issue. So there are strengths and weaknesses to both tools. There are people working on a hybrid approach, which is going to take a little bit of the state and a little bit of the migrations and marry them together. I would look for that stuff. Watch this space. I'll be talking more about that later, but that's not today. Today we are looking either at state or migrations, and I'm going to show a little bit of both today. All right, so we can cover that. Just keeping an eye on the time. In terms of questions or comments or anything going on, this is the one area where you're most likely to have to make some hard decisions. There are tools that are very specific to a particular database and that work well with them, but don't work with other databases. If you are only working within a single database, cool, you can grab that tool and you're going to be good to go. But if you're looking at multi-platform stuff, and most of us are, you are going to look at one of the tools that supports multiple platforms. So this is one area where you're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to do some looking around, test out which ones are going to work best in your environment, which ones are going to support you best. But you do have to add this. Azure DevOps fully supports all the stuff I'm going to show today is supported from within Azure DevOps. Done, right? No extra work involved, no extra tooling involved. But this bit, the database tool, you have to add something. Now, I'm sure there's someone out there going, well, if we're SQL Server only, can't we just use Visual Studio database tools? And the answer is, sure, you can. And that is free with your MSDN license. Cool. So if you've got an MSDN license and you're only working inside of SQL Server, there's a tool. But as soon as we add, okay, by the way, we need to do Oracle or and MySQL and Postgres, or, I'm not doing SQL Server at all, I'm only doing Oracle. Then you've got to start looking for other tools, and you're probably going to have to buy one. There's some open source tools out there, but the open source tools, and there are some good open source tools out there. but most of them are still have like a paid tier, and you're going to hit problems, and you're probably going to want to move to that paid tier at some point. But to get started, you can probably look at just one of the open source stuff and figure out from there. I will demo an open source product today. All right. So our deployment targets, we already said, whatever. Azure DevOps is extremely flexible because it can run on an agent, and that agent can be Linux, that agent can be Windows, can be whatever. It can run an agent locally, and because it's able to run that agent locally, whatever database system you're deploying to, it supports it. Obviously, if you're running on Azure, Azure SQL Database, SQL Server, Azure DB for MariaDB, Azure DB for PostgreSQL, all of that's available to you. But then anything else, Cosmos DB, Oracle Virtual Machines, I mean, anything else that you want to go to, we can make that happen. That's simple, right? It's just all a question of connectivity and then having the agent manage the process from there. Nice and simple and straightforward. Nothing surprising, nothing weird, nothing shocking. All right, cool. Let me just check one thing here. Right, I had not had the comments section open, but I've got it open now. So if there's any questions, please do feel free to shout out in here. I'm going to make sure I'm in the right spot. Go ahead, because otherwise what we're going to do is I'm going to go and do some demos now. We're going to talk through actual processes. Now, this is my personal Azure DevOps area. It's under there as Scary DBA, which is my nickname. No, I know I'm not very scary, but that was the nickname I got, and I've kept it. But let's start with talking about the organizational settings, and let's talk about security right out of the gate. So we've got the ability to have these pipeline pools. Now, the pipelines I'm running, I've got my default pipeline here. And it has run a bunch of different agents because it has more than one. I've got a desktop agent that I've been running that's running on my laptop. I've got an agent, the new dev agent here from last time it ran was 4 hours ago when I was testing some of my code prior to coming on. And it's running on a virtual machine. And then I've got another virtual machine, which I haven't run recently since September 2020. And it also has its own agent. Now you can turn these agents on, you can turn these agents off, you can assign them to one pool or another, but the key is that you've got security for these agents. You can control who has access, and you can then control what the access looks like and what the people can do within the agent. So you can very much manage this so that you are not accidentally exposing your production in systems. In fact, you would have to try hard to expose your production systems. You would have to go out of your way to create an agent, put it onto a production system, set up the security to get to the agent, and then make the agent have access to everything on God's green earth. In other words, you would have to really work hard to get there. Could you do that? Sure. Why would you do that? That's a different question. But I just wanted to point this out. This is the really, honestly, getting the agent set up. I found this to be the hardest part of the process. So plan to spend a little bit of time here getting them doped out correctly and spending some time walking through it. Because after that, you're just going to be working within your pipelines. Let's go ahead and look at our pipelines. Doing okay on time? Got about, what, 20 minutes, right? Cool. Give me a second. My internet gets a little slow when I'm trying to present and browse Azure at the same time. Right, so I just started a new project today. There's nothing in it, so I'm not going to show it to you. But then I've got a couple of other projects here. We're going to go ahead and open up this one and this one. And I'm opening up more than one at a time just so that we're able to get into them a little quicker because otherwise it's going to take us a while to catch up. All right, so this project is just a local project I have for building out a fake database I called Ham Shack Radio. So imagine a radio sales business, but I'm just focused on the database of it right now. Wow, this is going slow. Let's close one window. Maybe it'll help speed things up slightly. Yeah, I'm still online. Please do, if you want to type questions in, I've got the comments window open. I can see them as we go. Man, this is running slow. Great googly moogly. It's like watching grass grow. Well, okay, maybe we need to go one at a time just to slow things, to speed things up. Let's close that off. I do apologize. Everything was working this morning just fine, but now it's acting up. This is the joy of the cloud, though. As much as it's functional and as great as it is, and man, it is great. I really do like working with it. You can't hit problems like this. So come on, baby. Don't leave Grant hanging. In the meantime, here, let's just, there it goes, finally. All right. So let's go straight to the repos. Right. Awesome. All right. So you can see it's got the little GitHub icon, so you can tell that I'm in GitHub. Do you have an option to choose to deploy some databases options, schema plus data, and some are only schema, e.g. sending master tables of data? Yes. I mean, great question. And the short answer is yes. It's just kind of, you have to decide what it is that you think is your solution. It depends on the tool that you're using as to how you can control schema and data or just schema. But because you're using a pipeline like this, you can put in multiple steps, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. And so I'll point out where that would answer your question better. But you can see that I've got here is it's got GitHub, gitignore. I've got a couple of different folders. If we open up one of the folders, you can see that there's a bunch of stuff inside there. And if we take a look at that, inside of that are these things called migrations, because I am using a migration. And inside that is SQL. That's it. It's just SQL and nothing to it, no big deal. But these are version controlled SQL files that let me see what's going on, and I can control them that way. And that's all I want to show about the repos right now. I could show you how I connect up my repos through either Visual Studio Code. I do it that way, or I do it through Azure Data Studio here. Because I'm mainly working with SQL Server and Postgres, and this is a great tool for working with SQL Server or Postgres. And so I use it because it has a very good connection up to my source control system. So I can take a look at source control here. You just have to open a folder and then off you go. I mean, there's just nothing to it. So we're going to skip past that because that's actually the easiest part of this whole process. Let's start talking pipelines. Now, my pipelines right now, I've got 3 pipelines set up, and I want to look at all 3. What we're going to do is we're going to do edits on all 3, just so you guys can see what they're doing. So we're going to open that one. That's our pre-prod environment. This is our QA. We're going to edit that one. And then this is continuous integration. Oops, hit the wrong thing. Oops. Horrible presenter, I apologize. Let's go back. Come on, there it goes, There we go, cool. All right. Come on. Man, it is painful today. All right, so this is a continuous integration pipeline. And so continuous integration means code that is constantly being tested. And so when I set up this continuous integration process, I'm setting it up with a blank database, with an empty database. Yeah, it definitely knows that it's running slow. So, okay, cool. That was neat because that means it's running slow on that side, not on my side. Excellent. Good to know. All right. Oh, look, and the agent pool's missing. That's weird. All right, there it goes. Cool. So what I'm doing for my continuous integration process, and again, like I said, I want to show you a few different processes today, just so you see possibilities for answering your own questions. So my continuous integration process does something before it does anything else. So the very first thing it does is, this is a build for SQL Server. And in SQL Server, there is a tool called SQL COP. It's open source. It's available to anyone. You guys can go and get it yourself. SQL COP is code coverage, ensuring that, do you have select star in there? Are you writing code that's in some problematic way? What are you going to do with it? So what this does is it looks at all of your code and compares it to SQL COP settings, and then identifies, hey, the new code you have checked in does not pass SQL COP, at which point everything stops and we're not doing continuous integration deployment. Ta-da, nice and easy. If it passes the SQL COP tests, then it does a build to my Hamshack database. So my Hamshack database is going to run, and then ultimately it runs and it publishes an artifact that you see right down there. And yeah, these are GUI settings for a particular tool. We can look directly at the YAML. And you can see the YAML is actually, in a lot of cases, easier, but it's a little harder to demo. So I tend to not spend a lot of time looking at the YAML when I'm showing stuff off like this. But you guys can see how it's able to run that thing and run the steps that it's doing and the simple commands it's doing. So this one is actually outputting to a NuGet package. It's not outputting to SQL as such. It's outputting to a NuGet package. But you know what a NuGet package is? It's an XML file that's been zipped, and inside that XML file, because you can just unzip it and open it up, and you know what's inside there? SQL. So yeah, I'm still messing with SQL. So that's one possible pipeline. It is test my code. If it fails, stop. If it doesn't fail, do a database build to validate that we can do a database build, and then generate an artifact and publish that artifact. And in this case, it's a NuGet package for the artifact. Now, let's go to our QA build. Because the QA build is completely dependent on the other build succeeding. Because what I'm doing with my QA build is I am opening up my projects and I am pulling it from the NuGet feed. So I've got that NuGet feed that I generated the NuGet package for in my previous test, right? One test does one thing, this test does another thing, but it takes that same NuGet package and now it's going to apply it to a database, and then it's going to run some QA testing. Now, right now I don't have QA testing set up. What I would do here, and this would answer your question, is I would add additional steps right here to do more testing. So this is also where if I wanted to do data movement, I could add them in that way, depending on the tool I'm using. Some of the tools actually support data movement directly, but others want to take a look at this stuff. Okay, oh, another question. Let's see. Do we have an option of, oh no, that's the same one. Can we match versioning too, just in case you need to roll back? Yes, absolutely. Now, rollbacks are harder. Some tools support rollbacks directly. Some tools require you to build your rollback scripting, and some tools don't do rollbacks. So you're going to have to look at which tools and what kind of rollback mechanism they have. State-based comparison usually will say, well, okay, you want to roll back, compare your current database to a database that doesn't have the thing that you had, and then generate the script and find those two. But a migrations approach could have undo scripts built right in, and it can run those. The one thing I would say about rollbacks, just to add to your question, is I would never, ever, ever rely upon my rollback scripts working unless I also ran them through the kind of testing that we're running our deployment scripts through here. So what you're going to want to do is set up another pipeline, or maybe some additional steps in your existing pipeline to test the rollback scripts in order to be sure of one thing and one thing only. The first time we run a script is not production. You don't want to do that. The first time you run that script is a non-production environment. And then after that, you cover the bases. All right, we're doing okay on time. Cool. All right, so that's my QA build. Now, my pre-production build. What I'm doing is, so I'm using another tool. I'm not going to worry about what tool it is right now, but I'm using another tool to reset my database from production. What it's doing is it's going out and getting a copy of the production backup, and it's ensuring that I've got a copy of production after appropriately cleansing the data and all that fun stuff. But I've got a copy of production that I'm then going to, again, run my same test on. So I can run that same build test and do that same kind of validation, but this time it's taking that NuGet package and it's running it against production. So it's just going one at a time through all of these environments. So it builds a CI process that validates code and then builds a package. Then it runs a QA test, and if that passes, it passes on that package to a pre-production test, and then the pre-production test can run against a copy of the production database to make things more accurate in my testing. And then if I want to, from here, I could either take that NuGet package and deploy it to production, or whatever, add another mechanism for doing the production deployment. Now, before I keep going, let me show you one other pipeline. Now, this is the pipeline using Flyway. Flyway is an open source database deployment tool. It's a migrations approach, and it is fully open source. So we can get in here and take a look at the pipelines for it. Because what I'm doing is here's just a little bit different with Flyway. And I just want to show this. Again, you have options, right? There's not like one true path that you have to follow. Instead, there's lots of different ways you can get this done. So I'm just showing you one more way to get it all done. And this one is using all open source. It's deploying to a Postgres database, and I'm using PowerShell to do it all. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. When you check code in and commit it, and publish and push the Git code up, it then will run. And what it's doing is the first thing it does is it creates a container for Postgres. And this is a simplified continuous integration process. So I'm going to run and create a container for Postgres. I do, for some reason, have to sleep for 10 seconds, even though it waits until the container finishes. It's not quite instantiated the instance, and so connections become an issue. So I put in a 10-second delay. That works. Then I'm connecting up to my Postgres container, and I'm creating a database called Hamshack Radio. It's a blank database. There's nothing inside of it. That's it. Nice, simple, straightforward. You guys see everything that we're doing. The code is right there. Like I said, it's no secret, no tricks. All right. Oh, you guys can hear my dog. This is a new office for me, and it seems a lot quieter when the dog starts barking, but obviously she's still pretty loud. All right. Next thing. I'm running another set of commands, and I'm using containers to do it. So what I'm doing here is I've got the option. I could run a container, and I could do what's called a dry run for Flyway. A dry one for Flyway spits out the SQL that it's going to run. So what I frequently will do is I will do a Flyway dry run, spit out the SQL, and then immediately run Flyway to do the deployment. But in this case, I'm using a container to do the Flyway deployment. So let me zoom back out so I can zoom in the right spot. There we go. So what I'm doing is I'm running the Flyway container. Now, the only trick is I have to make sure that I'm running it from the local path so it knows where everything is at. And then other than that, I'm running a Flyway container, and that does the deployments. Once that's complete, it then goes through and removes the Hamshack Radio container that I created for my Postgres database. So I'm running, creating a Postgres database, making sure that the right database is in there, connecting up to it using Flyway, doing a build, generating a script, and then throwing everything away after I've validated that my scripts run. So that's yet another possible, it's not like the only, but another possible pipeline that you guys could be running. Like I said, I'm actively, let's go to here. I'm actively building another one here. I've got, movie management 17 because there were 16 ones before it. But I'm actively building multiple different pipelines for different databases and database systems. So there's a lot going on with this. It's a lot of fun. I am working on this one now. It's my new one, but it is possible to do these any number of different ways. And so I'm putting together different methodologies of doing these over and over again so that I can show different mechanisms when people have questions. All right. Cool. Let's go back to our slides because we've got about 4 minutes left. All right. So putting it all together, what we would do is we go from Visual Studio Code, we go through GitHub. GitHub then fires off the pipeline. The pipeline runs Flyway. Flyway generates artifacts and or does deployments. It's nice and simple. It's just really not a whole lot to it. I understand we wanted to make sure there was time for questions at the end. It looks like we've got about 3 minutes. So I feel good about that timing, and make sure that we're not stepping on anybody else's toes. And if you guys have questions, now's a great time. Can we be introduced to the dog? No, she's outside. Sorry.
All right, Grant, that was absolutely great.
Is there any integration? Oh, hang on. I just saw one other question. Is there any integration of Azure DevOps tools like Ansible or Chef?
This one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you can plug them all in. There's a whole slew of plugins. Again, the mind boggles. You can do almost anything you can think of. So it's really just a question of, again, focus first on your people, focus second on your process, and then you can start to automate it and build it out. So it's completely expandable.
Right. Let's see if we have missed any question. I don't see. I think you answered all of them while they came in. Right, Grant, looks like that was absolutely amazing session. I although it went all over my head, but I would say you had a very good pace, and you can bet on me while I say that, because I've been hosting so many people from past 8 days. So that was a very good pace, I would say.
Well, thanks.
And that any final thing you want to plug in about you, your company, or anything before we go to the next session?
Well, look, Redgate Software has got a great selection of tools. I would love for you guys to go and buy them because that's how I stay employed. But let's just talk DevOps real quick before we go. DevOps is very, very difficult. Not because of the tools and not because of everything else, but because it requires so much discipline. And because, as we saw, there's so many moving parts to the tools. I urge you, when you start databases, to just have a CI process and nothing else. Don't think about data. Don't think about testing. Think about getting my code into source control, getting it back out, building a database. You can do those 3 things: code in, code out, build. The rest is labor. And so, let's do it that way.
Yeah, well said. Thank you so much, Grant. That was absolutely amazing session. I know it's Monday, so I really appreciate your time and all the things that you do for the community. We'd love to have you back. We do all the events throughout the year. And have a nice week ahead and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
See you. Bye.
All right, with that absolutely amazing session by Grant on Azure DevOps deploying database changes, we now move to our next session. That's by Joe. And I don't remember after how long I'm hosting it. I believe almost after like 1 year. He has been really busy going to offline events, which scares me about my job. Never mind. Let's invite Joe to Cloud Summit 2021. Hi, Joe. Welcome to Cloud Summit 2021.
Thank you for having me. I'm always so impressed with those intros. I feel like I have to live up to the hype of that. Taught a million people so far. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, how are you doing all this time? Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been at least 3 or 4 months since I've actually done a talk. I've actually been doing a lot of speaking. This last weekend, I was in Kansas City doing a talk at KCDC, actual live in-person event. It was very unusual.
Yeah, people now looking at you, right?
And I had to be dressed from like my sneakers up, not just in a shirt.
I hope this virtual thing stays. Let it become a hybrid because many people have built job upon it, like me.
Yeah, I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
All right, Joe. So you're going to talk about build and ship it. Quite an interesting title. Please feel free to go ahead and share screen, and then we can get started.
And I am sharing in, let's see, screen 1. Okay. Let's get this PowerPoint working, and you should see it. Oh, wrong PowerPoint.
I think maybe you want to move to the other presenter. It's no, I think we're getting the presenter view. Yeah.
There you go.
That's perfect. I can see. And next 45 minutes is all yours.
Cool. Well, thank you. This should be quick. There's a super bunch of slides. Actually, no, there's like 4 slides. Mostly it's all intro. Like Simon said, my name's Joe Guadagno. I am a director in technology at Rocket Mortgage, the US's largest mortgage provider. You can reach out to me on any one of these means. I'm super active on Twitter at jguadagno, Facebook Joseph Guadagno, josephguadagno.net. You can check out my blog at jjg.me/aboutme. And I used to stream on a regular basis. I kind of got away from it for a bit, but hopefully now that life has calmed down, I will get back to it. But enough about that. You're not here to see me. You're here to talk about, or here to listen about building and deploying apps on the Azure platform. So Grant's talk was a great one that introduced us to integrating SQL Server or source control into your pipeline. I'm going to kind of show you how you can do that from beginning to end without the SQL part. So the first thing we're going to do is build it, and then we're going to ship it. We are going to be working on a application that allows us to basically tell us how awesome we are, because we're all awesome people, and this just is reaffirming. The concept is really not so much the application, but how we're going to take this package, which is listed as awesomeness, and let's increase that font just a little bit. Oops. And I'm going to just take a quick look at the chat to make sure you can see the right screen. Simon, can we see the right screen? Should be seeing, yep, Visual Studio is up there. Okay, we are going to compile this app, which is this package here. It has one method that just picks a random number between 0 and 10. And again, like I said, it really doesn't matter as much. We're just going to look at how we can use the app. So there is a test case written for it. So let's go back and first make sure we could build it. You always want to do that first before you set up your pipeline. So make sure your app builds, otherwise you're going to have lots of issues. So I'm going to CD to the source. And if I look at the source, I see I have awesome package here. So I'm going to execute a .NET build. And it should compile. It's going to determine packages, make sure everything is good. Ignore the part about the warning of preview, using a preview version of .NET, but that really shouldn't matter. Now let's go and run our test case just to make sure that's working. I'm going to cd test, and then I believe it's right in this directory. Yep, So I'm going to do a .NET test. And in a couple of seconds, it's going to build that process. See, it's restored 1 or 2 tests. And 1 passed, no failed. So everything was good. So now we're ready to get started. First thing we're going to do is go over to Azure and take a look at the DevOps repo. So you can set this up like GitHub repos or Azure DevOps. Right now I'm using Azure DevOps. I'm going to show the pull build pipelines from here. I'm also hosting this service within Azure DevOps. You can also do the same thing with Git, but I kind of kept everything together. As you see, I have currently 4 projects set up, or 4 projects set up. Public, which is everything mostly for these demos. Private set of utilities. These are my own NuGet packages that are not open source yet. Actually, I think all of them are open source, and then some other personal projects I work on. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the public, which I already have the repository set up. It matches what you saw on screen before. So we have source, awesomeness, awesome package, .csproj, test, and then a couple other things. So let's start with building a pipeline. So in order for us to do that, we're going to click over here on the pipelines tools. Now you can actually do this via Visual Studio Code, Writer, or the command line if you choose. I just want to show you how to do it from here. And then later we're going to kind of switch back over to Visual Studio Code. So we're going to choose pipelines here. And because I have none of them set, it's going to ask me to create a pipeline. So let's go do that. I'm going to click Create Pipeline. And it's going to ask you where your code is, blah, blah, blah. Right now, everything is hosted in our Azure repo. So let's go and choose Azure repo. It says, okay, you're currently signed in. Which one of these do you want to see? We are going to use the awesome package repo. So let's go and do that. It's going to ask you to do some basics, like what do you want to do? We are going to choose a starter pipeline. And the reason why I want to choose starter pipeline is just so we can show you basically file new. It's an empty project. I can choose ASP Core, .NET Desktop, etc. But this one is a little bit better when you're just generating it. So you see, out of the box, it's going to give you a couple of different things. So here's just some comments. If you click on here, it'll take you to a link to explain what XAML is and everything you can do in here. And then there are 4 main pieces to it: the trigger, the pull, the steps, and then the script. So the trigger indicates how you want these build scripts to run. So typically you want them to run either on a PR, on a pull request, or a merge into one of your branches. For this demo, we're going to set up when it goes and merges into a branch. So let's go and do that now. I'm going to change this. I created a CI branch. And hopefully I created it both online and in the cloud, or locally and in the cloud. The next thing is the pull. So this indicates where it's going, how it's going to build the product. So essentially what it does is creates a virtual image using something like Docker to run within Azure to compile, test, deploy anything you want to do for the apps. The fastest one to use right now is Ubuntu latest. So it just says, give me that. The reason why I say fastest is because one of the smallest. If you use one of the Windows ones, it kind of takes a little bit extra time to run, only because the file size is larger. So this one usually runs quicker. And then the steps indicates everything that you want to do in your app. So a step is build the app. Another step could be deploy it. Another step could be test it, etc. So we're going to go and do that. Let's click save and run. When we click save and run, it's going to give us a commit message. Essentially, it's going to commit this code directly to a branch, we are going to want to commit it to the CI branch. You can commit it directly to main if you want. I like to have a separate branch for it just because you're running tests and everything, and I'm not going to bother with pull requests right now. So this is going to create a PR. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the comments, but they're off on the screen that way. So I'll take a quick break every once in a while just to spin out with comment questions. If you do have them, bring them out. Okay. So now that it's run, we're going to see.
Joe, I'm really sorry to interrupt. Can you please zoom a little bit?
Zoom in? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. That's better. Thank you.
Okay. It's hard to tell right now. On my screen, the letters are super gigantic. Okay, cool. Let me know if any of the other screens do it. I've tried to increase the font size whenever. So now we're here. We're going to go back to that other project. Where is it? That's this one. No, not this one. That's the later one. We're going to go here, and I'm just going to pull down the latest. So let's go cd that back, git pull. And if I got it configured, I didn't pull down the git pull branch. Let's go here and pull this down. I had this problem last time when I ran it. I didn't sync them up the right way. So what I am going to do is just make it a little bit easier. Actually, let's do this. Git pull origin and then CI branch. That should work. There it goes. Now, if I have it correctly, I should see a new file listed in here called Azure Pipelines, which is everything I did there. So now I have it in Visual Studio Code. I can write it here or I can write it online. So let's go back and look at it. I also received an email, which I'm not going to show now. I'll show later, but you might have heard a beep. Actually, let's go take a quick look at it. So here, I should have gotten an email that's saying, build succeeded. I have a new package deployed. It's a bold send to try and share your email while you're on live because you never know what's going to pop up in it. So cool. Now let's look at building. Let's go back to the Azure pipelines because the editor there is a little bit better. There are some better plugins that you can use in Visual Studio Code to make it better, but this one I like, and it's also a little bit simpler to use. So we're going to choose Edit Pipeline, and that's going to load up an editor. What you'll notice is you get a couple of different things. Let's go and get rid of these steps right now because we're not going to do those anymore. And then we're going to do something called a task. We're going to look for several different tasks in there. There's hundreds of them, and you can actually download a lot more. We're going to spend most of the time on the build.NET Core. So once you click on one of them, you're going to get some instructions as to what to do. So let's go with, actually, let's do this one first. We actually have to tell it to use .NET, and I'm not going to scroll through all these. As you can see, there's a lot of them. So let's go use .NET. And what this does is gets a specific version. So here we're going to say install a version of .NET. And because right now we're in preview, we want to just do 5.x. You can specify this to a specific build number, specific version number, or even sub builds. When it sees an X, it kind of just takes it. This means anything in .NET 5 major. I can do 5.0.300 if I want, but 5.x is fine. So once I click add, see it adds this step in with the YAML in there. If I click on settings here, I can get and see all those settings, including any advanced versions. So once I do that, I can save, and I can just keep the messages. I can add anything. I'm going to commit directly to the CI process. Once this happens, let's go back and see what the builds look like now. So I am going to, there's a couple of different ways you can get here. I typically go straight to builds. So I'm just going to open up in a new tab right now. And here it says the recently running. This little spinny blue guy says that something's running right now. It's showing me the last run, which is the current date. So if I zoom in here, we see the current date, 2021, September 20th, the second build. So this is the second build I'm doing for the day. It actually already ran. It's a green success, but let's take a look at what that meant. So if I zoom in, I can see all my branches for the day. I can click on it, and then it says it was triggered by me. It was in the repository awesome package CI branch. This is the git commit ID. When it happened, how long it took. Now we're going to notice this is going to take a little bit longer and longer as we do it, but let's take a look at the job. So the job had essentially one task, even though there were lots of other subtasks for it. So the job started, it initialized. That means it went out and got the stuff. This part we don't need to zoom in because we're not really looking at that, but essentially it's going to create the VM and get everything. Then you see it's going to do a git checkout. So here it's coming in and doing git version and giving long file support, and then going through and eventually checking out the code. You see here it found the new branch CI. It's getting the code for the new branch, then switching to it. Then we're going to go and use .NET. So here it says we're using .NET. We're going to acquire a specific version. It found version 5.040 because I specified anything in major 5 will work. And then it downloaded it, detected the platform. We're good to go. So let's go back and edit that pipeline. So we're going to come back in here, and our next step is to add a build. So you notice when I first selected it, this was all selected. If you come back here and hit something else and add, it's going to replace the selection. So one of the things you want to always do is just kind of create a new line. So we want to build it out here and then click add. And it should add a new task for build. Now we are going to, let's just make sure it runs. So I'm going to do save, and then just do add build script, add build command task, and then save. And I come here and I want to just make sure that it actually builds. So let's come back here. We're going to go back one. And then we need to click on awesome package here. We should see the third build happening. Click on that. You can actually watch it in real time. So now it's running the use .NET task, and that one was done. Now it's running the .NET CLI, and it should be building it. We should see a command here at some point, .NET build, which is that blue text that kind of flew by really quickly right here. So we actually built it. So cool. Now that we have it built, let's go and clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to walk over to my other screen and kind of replace some things. So let's go copy, only just to save time for typing. So here I added a new task called, excuse me, the spacing is off, display name. And we're really not adding a task per se. It's more of a display name. So here we're changing it. Instead of saying .use .NET, we're actually telling it to run .NET, download .NET. So let's see what that looks like. So I just got to fix the spacing. And I should probably copy this from somewhere else. There we go. I think still got an IntelliSense error, bad indentation. So let's go. Oh yeah, that was bad indentation. So now if I save this, now with display names, yes, Alan. Oh My Posh is one of my favorites because it works on both my Windows machine and my Mac machine, and it's super clear to use, especially when I start dropping to the command line. Let's go back here and choose the fourth one. Now you notice when this job is done, you'll see here now it says download .NET 5 and then build package. So now I have clarity as to what I'm doing. As we start building out, you'll see a lot more steps added to the mix. So I get pretty particular with the name, so I know exactly what was successful and what fails. So now we're going to go and add a task to test it out. Let's go here and add some more spaces just in case. You'll notice when I actually click on something, I get IntelliSense to it. So if you use a Visual Studio Writer or Visual Studio Code, you get full-on IntelliSense. It's smart enough to know what you're doing. So if I hit dash, it's automatically going to know that I have a bunch of different things to do. I can publish, I can do download, I can do bash, I can do anything else. So we would want to add a new task here, and we're going to call this test. And instead of, I'm just going to add it now. But again, we're going to go back and copy paste from a previous one, just so you don't see me typing out everything. At the end, I'm gonna walk through and show you some blog posts where you can see this in action, which has all these commands built in a sample pipeline that you can choose to use for yours, so you don't have to keep going back and forth like I'm doing one by one. So now we have the test running. Let's go and save that one. Now with unit test. Now, oops. You typically won't do this one off. You'll typically start with a pre-compiled one that you use over and over again and just tweak things. But I'm showing you one by one to understand how it works from behind the scenes. So let's go back to number 5 we should be at now, which is running. If I click on job, we'll see here it's checking out, building the packages, and then, ooh, not a good spelling error. Thanks to the abbreviation, it came up looking pretty bad, but it packaged up. Oh, it should have been packaged up. Did I copy the wrong one? Yes, I copied the wrong one. Oops. My bad. I jumped ahead one. So let's go back and change this. So we want to add a task for testing. And then you could enter a lot of this. I typically don't. Let's do space display name, and we're going to do test the package. I jumped ahead and did the package up, which I'll explain in a second. Now with test for reals, you're probably hearing a lot of beeps behind the scenes. What's happening is every time there is a push, I'm getting a successful message or a failure from Azure. And I can turn that off, but I like to keep it on because it'll remind me that I'm actually having this running. And I want to make sure I'm a good citizen and shut down the jobs when they're done. Let's go and see this. We should have a test package going. Once we're at build, come on, I got the build going. Now we're testing the package. See, we're running .NET test. Should come back with a success or failure, and it failed. So we'll get a big red X, and in about 20 seconds, I'll get an email saying it failed. So now I get an X here indicating that it failed. If I come in here I can look at it and it's telling me the process .NET failed with exit code 1. And why did it fail? I can actually look at that and see why. I'm guessing it failed because the code has the ability to, or the unit test look for an error code greater than 0, and I'm guessing I got a 0 in there. So let's go and rerun the job just in case. So I can go back and click rerun failed jobs without having to do another commit and merge just to see, because there's actually a flaw in my unit test. If we look back at the unit test here, it says to assert true if awesomeness is greater than 0, and the actual code itself says to give me the next number between 0 and 10. So as a result, there's a good chance that that can fail. Hasn't happened yet because Azure thinks I'm pretty awesome. Let's see when this goes here. Test passed this time, so it went through, and now we're on our next step. So I kind of jumped the gun. To recap, we downloaded .NET 5. We built a package for it, essentially compiled it. Now we're testing the package. Next thing is we're going to want to package it up. So I'm still using a .NET Core task. We're using the task or the command of build, and then we're specifying the source. If you don't specify the source for the package, what ends up happening is it's going to try and package up all of them. And I only want the actual source package and not the test cases packed up. And we're going to use this configuration to package in a little bit. I also set it to do not build because we're building it up here. There's no sense in wasting resources and building and then rebuilding. So if that's done, let's go and update the package. But before we do that, I want to make sure that we can see, I lost my mouse, what it looks like. So if we go to the package, we should see something here that we created a awesome package 1.0.2020.0920.6-preview.NuGet package. You're probably wondering, how did that happen? Well, I kind of tweaked some things in the overall package. So let's go take a look at that for a second. We're going to go back to Visual Studio Code. We're going to look at the solution package. So I added a couple of things in here, including a spelling error. So let's go and fix that. This is, I'm editing right now the awesome package.csproj file. So here I'm saying we're building a .NET Standard 2.0 package. And the reason why it's 2.0 is so I have compatibility with .NET Framework as well as .NET and .NET Core. You can choose whatever version you want. That doesn't matter. I am adding my company name, the author, which is myself, the product name, description, and copyright. All this stuff will appear inside of the package as well as the DLL. I'll open up the DLL in a minute to show it. I'm then creating a new property group where I'm setting a version major, a version minor, and a version build. So this gives you your 1.0.1 for the application. There are lots of tools that actually do this. Git version is a very popular one that works both in GitHub Actions as well as Azure pipelines. The version I was using, I didn't really like much. That's not to say it's a good thing. I just couldn't figure it out, and I wanted to understand more how it built and then control it via the package versus a separate file. The next part is the more, I don't want to say confusing part, but the little bit more complex part. So here we are building the version prefix. The version prefix, if we go back to the previous screen, that's this little bit right here. So right now we're saying 1.0.1. Let's zoom in on that so we can see what we're actually talking about. We're saying 1.0.1. So version major, version minor, build, and then release. So we have 2021.0920.6 preview. So all that came from this. So here we create 3 version prefixes, and let's zoom in on them to see a little bit better. So here we're saying if there's a condition, build underscore build number. Now this little $ means it's a variable. So we're looking at the Azure pipelines to say, if you have a build number, that must mean I'm building on Azure, so I want to do something different. So here it says, if the build number, or if this build number equals nothing, meaning I can't find one, then what I want you to do is use the version major, version minor, version build, and then append local to it. So let's see what that looks like. So if I do let's cd into source here and do a .NET build here in a second, and I believe I can just do Explorer dot, and Windows Explorer should open up here. If I look at the bin directory and debug, I'll see a .NET Standard 2, which is I just built, and this package. So let me right click and choose show more options. Actually, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do properties. So let's zoom in a little bit for the screen to help. So here it says the general, and if I'm looking at types of files open with blah, 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 I am going to click on the details. So if I look at details, we'll see here it says file version 1.0.1.0, which is the one I built. The product name is Awesome Sample, which is the product. And here the product version is 1.0.1-local. So that actually came from here. So it was successfully able to determine that. And if I go and change this to .NET 2 and then do another build here, in a couple of seconds, once it's built, we should see that this went to version 2. Now let's click on here and view details, and now it's version 1.0.2 local. So this provides a little bit more control over how you increment the versions. So let's go back to here and see the other thing. So now it says if the build number is not equal to nothing, meaning you have a build number, and the configuration, so this is the Visual Studio or .NET configuration, is set to debug, then I want to use major minor version or major minor build, and then that build version, and then the word preview, which is good because that indicates that, hey, I'm still in development for the component. I don't want it publicly released yet. Now it says if there's a configuration that doesn't equal debug, then I want to just set it to version major, minor, and build. Now you're probably wondering where I get this configuration from. Well, I haven't given the ability to go and change that. So by default, it's going to take whatever is in the process. So let me do a git add here to make sure I get the new version of the file. Let's do a git pull to make sure I have the latest version. And then, come on, I did that again. git pull origin, and then ci-branch. And while that is pulling, I will look, see if there are any questions. No questions so far. Cool. Now let's do a git push. I should have did this prior to, so I apologize for the extra typing. Luckily, Git is so smart now that it tells me exactly what I needed to type. Cool. That should have also triggered off a build, which is fine. We don't actually need it to build, but we'll see that there's another 4.0 out there. So while that's happening, we added the version information. We are going to now change the pipeline a little bit. So now we're going to introduce the variable to the pipeline so that we, or the pipeline, will know when we are building the app, what environment do we want it to be in, whether we want it to be in debug or release. So that gives us the ability, or that is done through the parameters. Sorry about that, hit the wrong button. So we are going to add this right above the trigger section. And again, I have to fix the formatting, so give me a second. Oh, and I copied the wrong text. Oh no, I look weird. There's a lot of copy and paste with this. Like I said, you tend to reuse them over and over again. And let me put these in here, and then you'll see, or I'll explain what they are. Display name, you should be back one. You should be back one, you should be back one. Display name, default, values. Oh, it's probably complaining because I don't have quotes around this. What are you complaining about? Add indentation. Oh. Problem with copying from a guide, I don't have tabs enabled. So right now it's saying, I'm going to add a parameter. We're going to call it build config. We're going to use the display name build configuration to use. The default is going to be debug, meaning if I don't give you that parameter, just assume it's debug. Otherwise, my two choices are debug and release. Now this corresponds to Visual, this corresponds to the Visual Studio, aka .NET build configurations, but you can add in any that you want. So there's a question, can we set Azure DevOps for cross servers? I don't know what you mean by cross servers. Do you mean deploy it on things other than Azure, like AWS or Google Cloud? If that's the case, yes. You can even do this for on-prem. If you have on-prem Azure DevOps servers, you can use this for displaying locally. Hopefully that answered your questions. So now that we have these parameters, we need to add in, we need to be able to take these parameters and assign them as variables. So after the pool, we are going to, I kind of hate that the IntelliSense does this because I want to add spaces to it. We are going to create a variable called build configuration. So let's do that, and let's paste that here. So now we're saying there is a variable called build configuration. We want it to be, called build configuration, and we want you to take the parameters build configuration. There's no way to really turn this into it. You can do parameters that build config and reference it everywhere, but then it becomes extra work. Now you also notice down here, where was it? We added in the ability to indicate that actually when we package it. So there's a build configuration that we're going to use. So under our build process, let's do, actually, we're just going to add this as an option. So these are called inputs. So we are now taking off the versioning scheme. We're going to version by build number, and then we are going to use this set of arguments saying, hey, when you pack this, use the configuration of whatever configuration I provided. So now, just adding some extra space here. So now, if I build it, I'm going to save, and let's just put in adding in build config. Hit save. Now there should be a new one. I think it's number 8 by now, maybe 9. Oh, 7. And look here, we should see a packing using that eventually when it gets here. And now I have to remember going forward that I need to choose a better name for that because it doesn't come well on the screen. And come on, 30 seconds. Where are we? This is the worst part about this demo is you got to kind of just wait for all the process to run. Here it's running the test. All the tests passed. Oh wait, did it fail? No, it passed. Oh, packaging failed. Why did packaging fail? Could not find the environment variable. Oh, I missed this step. What did I miss? So here is looking for the version number outside of build number, and I must have broken something. Oh no, this happens a lot when you're actually doing this. So let's go back and just take a quick look. I did version by build number, which I actually don't think I want to do. So let's go take a look. Good thing about this is, like I said, once you build these, you kind of have a reference going forward, and I actually have a reference in this source folder. So if you go to Azure Pipelines Backup, we can actually see the fully fledged one. So I got the build configuration. That's right. Ignore those messages. The packaging. Oh, it should be build off. So I had the actual exact opposite. So let me comment, oops, Control Z. Let me copy this out. Stop it. Let me copy this out and then paste it back here. Paste it back here. And then if I hit save, it should go. While we're doing that, since we are running close with time, I'm just going to kind of share the rest of it. So let's go back to Visual Studio because I think I only have 1 more minute. So let's close you for now. Next thing we're going to do is we would install a NuGet Vault signing tool. This allows you to sign the package. We'll then sign the package, publish the package, and push it to NuGet. And because we only have 1 minute of time, I am going to just bring up the PowerPoint deck, which has the remaining blog post as well as the sample code. So let's hit run and go here and then switch the main monitor. And that's there. In the meantime, I will handle any questions that pop up on the screen. And Simon, if you can share those with me since they are not visible to me. as of right now. Actually, let's see if I can move them over.
All right, Joe, that was absolutely great. I was just counting how many slides you had, and you just had exactly about 5 slides, and that was all about demo. And every time I would hear that pop sound, I mean, like
that beep,
that beep, right? I would go and check that on which tab am I receiving the email. I would just check on all my different tabs.
I keep it up there on purpose instead of turning it off, so that no one, or that you realize consciously that you're doing a build, you hear a new build kicked off, and it's a reminder. But normally all my beeps and whistles are turned off during demos.
Yeah. All right. There's one question from Manik. He says, are there any standard guidelines that a build pipeline should complete the execution within a particular time frame?
Yes and no. I don't think there are published guidelines. I actually do have a post on here.
I've added it.
One of these where you will see, I think it's under triggers. There's no standards, but what you end up doing when you're doing builds, you're using up shared resources. So if your resource goes and starts to be a hog as far as how much time it's taking, if it's taking up a lot of time, you will start to get deprioritized, meaning that your builds are going to take longer or go to other servers, or you might get rejected. If right now I have it set up for the free spot, which comes with Visual Studio, you get a certain number of minutes, but if you start going over the minutes, your builds will start getting queued off to other hours or other times.
All right, hope that makes sense to Manik. He also has a question that, will it be possible to do conditional stage execution in a pipeline?
Yes. Yes, in every one of those, in the examples I showed you, like if the code sign failed, you want the build to fail, which does actually happen. If we looked at our pipeline here, it actually failed. So by default, any failure stops. If you want to continue, you can set up a condition saying if this failed, skip this step, meaning this step is optional. But by default, you have to opt into that, because the default for Azure pipelines is any task that failed, the entire build fails.
All right, looks like that's all the questions we had from the comments. That was a great session, Joe. Anything you want to plug in before we move to the next session?
Nope. You can just feel free to reach out on any one of these. The blog post has everything that covers this from the beginning to end. Any questions, feel free to contact me via blog or Twitter.
Hold on, is that your short URL, gig.me?
Yep, I have them for every talk. So they always start off with jjg.me/BISI. If you just go to jjg.me, it takes you to my blog.
Oh, so that blog is jjg.me. Okay.
Yep.
That's perfect. That's clever. It looks like it's a short URL.
Yep, those are my initials. Joseph
Okay,
James Guadagno.me.
Yeah, that was great, Joe. Thank you so much. Really nice correcting you after so long. I hope to see you in person. And
hopefully one day.
Hopefully one day, if not India, then US.
Yep.
All right, Joe. Have a nice day ahead. Happy Monday. Thanks for time. Really appreciate it. See you soon. Ta-ra. Bye. Take care. All right. We now move to our final session of the day 8 of Cloud Summit 2021. It's 11 days of Summit. Can you even imagine it? It's 11 days. And we move to our final session. And the final session is by Davide Mauri. I hope I say his name the right way. I have been reading everyone's bio from the website, right? But for his bio, I'm going to read. Where did that go? I'm going to read bio from his book, right? So our next speaker, Davide, is a program manager in the Azure SQL Database product group. He has been working in the IT field since 1997, sometime when I was born, and was awarded Data Platform MVP status for 12 consecutive years. He started his career as a full stack developer and backend developer, and then focused on databases and data science for 15 years, while keeping alive his passion for development, mainly C# and Python. He then moved to the IoT and big data space, where ingesting, processing, analyzing millions of data points in near real time was his everyday challenge. Building from that experience, he joined Microsoft to help companies worldwide to leverage stream process at scale. He now works for Azure SQL database as a developer's voice inside the product group, working to make sure that Azure SQL database is and will be the best database option for developers. Let's welcome Davide. That was very fast. Hi,
Wow.
David. Welcome. To
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How have you been all this time?
All good, all good. Doing a lot of work, enjoying the weather here that was very nice in the Pacific Northwest this summer. All good, thanks.
Yeah, and I see you're always consistent with that background drawings, and I really like to
Yes,
see it.
yes. I just changed the color of the background, but the drawings are still there.
Yeah, exactly. So great, David. Really nice to have you back. I believe I last hosted you was in the SQL Server virtual conference.
Right, you're right,
Yeah,
right.
in the January, and really happy to host you once again. I see you have shared your screen. Once you move to your presentation, I'll add it to the stream.
Perfect, here we go.
Yeah, now everybody can see us.
Cool.
Screen, and next 45 minutes is all yours.
I'll go. Thank you. Well, so thanks everyone for staying until late, even if it's just noon here in the Pacific time zone. So let's go straight to the point and discuss about architecting modern cloud solution to take advantage of a word I just made up, and I think it's pretty cool, so I'm going to use it a lot: scaleoutability. And Simon already said everything you need to know about me, so let's move to the interesting stuff here. Well, this is also interesting. Just want to point that out, that if you are a developer, just make sure you check out the book. I wrote it with other 4 colleagues, and it's really focused on development and developers and how you can take advantage of Azure SQL in your development career. I guess this session fits in the book itself. So maybe in the second edition, I will definitely add this content in the book. And the idea is to discuss about how to create application at scale. And of course, creating an application at scale today is a kind of a well-known architecture. Basically, I'm simplifying a lot here, of course, but basically the only thing you have to do is to make sure that use the right tools, for example, Azure Function, web apps, containers, which help you to create application that scale out easily and I would say natively. And I say that creating an application that scale out is easy just because basically the biggest challenge here would be to manage the state if your application is stateful. But that's why almost all applications that scale out very well are stateless, because basically you just take the burden of managing the state and you push to something else, usually, right? So your application can easily scale out because you don't have to manage the state. And where you're going to put the state and the information that need to be preserved between one request and the other? Well, usually in a database. And what's happening here? Okay. So the point is that once you have moved the state to database, maybe you can start to think also to scale out database. But unfortunately, that is a little bit more complex because you cannot delegate another tool to manage the state or the data, right? The database is where you want to manage your data or your state. So you need to find a way, some clever way to scale out the database itself for real, like, not without having to just delegate someone else to do the work. And unfortunately, this turns out to be quite complex, way more complex, honestly. And in fact, is much more complex to create a database that can scale out than a single instance database. Probably you have heard about the CAP theorem and all the problems or the challenges around that. But honestly, the CAP theorem is just the tip of the iceberg, because there are many other challenges that you have to deal with when you create or you want to create or even just use a distributed database. For example, if you want to distribute the compute and the data, you need to think about partitioning or sharding, so physically sending different piece of data to different nodes. And of course, here I'm assuming that every one of you is a little bit familiar with the idea of scaling out, so where you have one service that is split across different nodes. And for database, is basically the same thing, with the addition that you have to deal with data. So you need to figure out how to distribute the data to avoid, for example, to have just one hot node that is serving all the requests. Or maybe you don't want to shard the data, but you also want to duplicate the data. So each node has its own copy of data. But then in that case, you need to find out how to do conflict resolution and also make sure the data is available to each node. And of course, if some nodes is, let's say, more distance than another node, and you need data in that node and you need to query that node, then also there is the problem of latency. For example, if you join data across different nodes and one is lower or far away than one other node, of course you have latency problem. Data movement is a rather big problem, because what if you need to move data from one node to another and you have, terabytes of data? And so this means also that you have to deal with traffic management. So you can see here I'm just pointing out some of the issues or the challenges that each distributed database have, and that is something that more or less you have to deal with. All of those or many of those, some are hidden by database engine. But if you have used a distributed system, be it Apache Spark or a distributed database, you probably have, like for example, Azure Synapse, you will probably have come to at least face some of these, right? So what I'm saying here is that maybe we can, and this is my personal opinion, maybe we can try as a developer community to try to change a little bit the approach. Because if we analyze why all these issues are there, is because mainly we try, again, as a developer, to create solutions that are completely ignorant about database behind the scene. And so they don't know that behind the scene we have a distributed database. And usually we do that because we want to have, of course, loose coupling and abstraction, because we want to say, okay, maybe today I have a distributed database, but maybe tomorrow my application will move to a single instance database. So I want to make sure that my application can work in both cases. So ideally, we want to keep the loose coupling and the abstraction principle in place, even if maybe we want to relax this idea of being ignorant or shielded by the complexity of the background database a little bit. Because I would say that for pure analytical workload, being completely ignorant or shielded by the complexity, so abstracted by the complexity of the background database, is usually great. Is so much abstracted a little bit. So for example, my proposal is, what if we start to create an application or solution that is actually aware that the database but might be distributed. Might be in the sense that you may start with just one node, so actually being just a single instance database, but then you can scale it out and then start to have more than one node. So we want to try to follow that principle, having the application know that the database is actually distributed one, but of course we also want to make sure that our application works with a single database. So let's start to think about this a little bit more. Usually a distributed database gives us access to the entire set of nodes via a single nodes. So again, we are abstracted for the complexity of the architecture behind the scene. And this access node or control node usually takes our query and send it out to the worker node to execute the query and then get the result, does the finish touches and then send the result back. Okay, that's where we are typically today. Now let's try to change this because this is the kind of a culprit of the issue, right? That we only have one node that we talk to. Now, what if our application can manage or can handle the fact and take advantage that actually we have many nodes behind the scene, not just one that we talk to, but many other nodes that we can use maybe. And maybe each of these nodes that composes database is actually freely usable. So I can connect to node 1 or to node 2 or to node 3, and each one is actually independent by each other. So let's start to, I would say, create some interesting discussion here because, of course, the first question would be, okay, but if I connect to node 1, how could I have the data that maybe has been changed by node 3? Or, this kind of issues may arise if each node has its own visibility or version of the data. So let's try to solve this problem at the root. Let's say that all nodes will be able to access all the data, right? That would solve the problem that if I'm connecting to node 1 and node 3 had made some changes, I will not be able to see it because instead with a common storage architecture, no matter who does the changes, we will all be able to see those changes, right? And now we can even say that maybe we have a set of nodes. Let's say we have 8 nodes or 10 nodes in our distributed database, and maybe some of these nodes have different sizes. One has 4 vCore, another one has 8 vCore, and so on. Well, again, with the ability to connect to a specific node, maybe I can use that added resources, that added power that a node may have to, for example, send more complex query than sending it to other nodes, right? So we can use the fact that nodes are diverse to solve different purposes or to solve different challenges, for example. Now, how we can make this ability to be so granular in which node to use and how to use them built into the application? Well, the idea is that maybe we can allow the application to decide where the query should be executed. So instead of talking to a single control node, and then the control node will send the data, the query, wherever it thinks it could be useful, we are actually controlling to which node we are actually sending the query. Now, this doesn't need to be or to happen always, because maybe, we just want to read some single line, a single row, and we don't really care which node pick up that request and execute it. But maybe for some queries, maybe some super complex query, we don't want to use only 2 vCore node, we want to use an 8 vCore node, right? Or maybe we can even say we want to send all the write requests to one node, so that all writes are there, and then all the reads will be served by other and different nodes, right? So read and writes are completely separated, which again helps to keep read and writes in different nodes and to have and to avoid to have any constraints or to use the same resources and then to have conflicts on resources. And for example, that it is perfect when we want to maybe execute a complex reporting or analytical query. And of course, we don't want that query to basically consume the resources that would otherwise be used by a write query, right? Because we want to be able to allow people to write into a database as fast as possible. So by sending that query to another node, we were actually isolating that query and making sure it doesn't affect the performance of other queries. So what we can do, for example, following that line of thought, is that it will be super good if we can get the query that the application want to execute, tag it so that we can say, okay, this is a read-only query, this is a write query, this is a reporting query, so that we can then have a routing mechanism that based on the tag that we apply to the query, it sends the query to the right node. Now, this is very similar, if you are familiar with the concept, to something called data-dependent routing. Instead of using the data on which we are going to execute the query, so typically a partition, we are using the metadata, the tag, to decide where to execute the query. Now, to simplify the problem for now, because otherwise, we'll have to deal with, for example, conflicts and conflict resolution, let's say that we want to basically scale out only the read-only part. So we will be sending all the write query into one single node that will be the only one writing the data. And then all the other read-only query can be sent to any other node. And then we can scale out the node that deals with the read-only queries. Now, this is of course a simplification, but since we are targeting the OLTP world, here we know that OLTP is basically 20%, 30% write, and the rest read. So we still, if this idea works nicely, we still have a lot of ability to scale out to satisfy the most demanding resource or request that happens in the OLTP world, which is the read request. So even by keeping only one node to write and all the other to read, it shouldn't be a huge problem and shouldn't affect performance at all. And to do that, what kind of database we can use in Azure to try to apply this idea? Well, Azure SQL Database Hyperscale is exactly the perfect architecture for this because it is a cloud-native architecture, which means actually is really a set of distributed services working together. And with Hyperscale, we have the compute node completely separated by the storage nodes. And each compute node can read and can access to the data saved in the storage node or made available by the storage node. So this means that one of the requirements we had at the beginning, that each node can access to the same data, is already provided by Hyperscale. So we don't have to worry about that. And specifically Hyperscale, how many read-only nodes we can create? Well, thanks to named replicas, which is a feature is now in preview, but is freely usable and is supported, you can create up to 30 named replicas, so 30 read-only nodes, each one independent from each other, each one with its own resource, so with its number of vcores and memory. And again, each one of these nodes will actually see the same data that is updated by the primary node, which is the only one that can do write operation. So Hyperscale plus named replicas really helps in creating what we have in mind at the beginning. So now what we can do is start to think how we can create this routing solution that we discussed based on tag. And so we can borrow the idea from the microservice architecture where actually all the access to the database is governed by the API layer, which means that no other application, if we remove from the game the ATL analytics application, are allowed to access database directly. So all access within a microservice to database is governed by the API layer. So we know exactly who is executing which query against which table. And more in general, we can create even a service that actually in a microservice architecture just provide access to database. So if we follow that idea, this is what we can do. We can have an API layer that could be even just maybe even a service on its own. And when the API tries to execute something, some routing logic will kick in, and depending on if we need to do an insert, an update, or delete, well, that write operation will be sent to the read-write replica that maybe has 4 vcores. And then maybe we just want to do a very simple select operation to get data related to only one row. Typical, for example, in a shopping cart scenario where we want to get the data for that specific shopping cart. There are many of them, right? So we want to get what I call the singleton read, split and spread across 2 different replicas. So I have 2 different replicas that are only read-only enabled. Each one has 2 vcores, and I will split that query. So each query will be, for example, routed randomly to one of the 2 available replicas. But maybe at some point in my application where I'm adding things to my my shopping cart, I also want to analyze how much money I spent in the last month on a specific category, for example. So I need to run a more complex query that analyzes a little bit more than just one row of data, right? So that kind of reporting or analytic query shouldn't go to the read-write replica because it will take the resource used by doing insert, update, or delete, so keeping the shopping cart updated. Shouldn't go to the replica dealing with basically a singleton read because that will be used to serve the GET request coming from the mobile application, so we want to be very snappy and quick. So we need to send analytical reporting queries to a dedicated read-only replica, maybe bigger than the other, with 16 vCore, that is able to crunch number very quickly and do aggregation very quickly without affecting performance of any other replica, right? And this is possible with named replicas. So each one of these, aside from the read-write, this is called the primary replica. All the other replicas are the named replicas. And then all of these replicas that are basically just the compute node will actually be reading from the storage, which is in hyperscale is composed by page servers. And so every replica will actually be seeing the same data managed and updated by the primary replica. So given that hyperscale helps to create this solution, now we can focus on the API layer itself. And this is kind of the architecture inside the API layer. So here we are receiving a request, let's say a GET request or a PUT request or whatever, an HTTP request. Of course, the controller will actually create the query. And then the controller, in this case, we may ask him to tag the query, like, are you doing a singleton read? Are you doing a reporting query? Are you just writing? And based on the color or the tag of the query, we can ask to a metadata repository what are the replicas that are available to us. And so, for example, if we are sending a singleton read-only query, we can send it to replica 1 and 2 because the metadata tell us that those two replicas are those who should be used to do these singleton read queries. And then we just send the query to the correct node. And this is actually pretty easy and to do and works very well. Because it makes the ability or the scale-outability of our solution really easy to be implemented. You can start from just one primary replica where all the requests are sent, and then as soon as you realize that maybe your request number is increasing, you can, for example, analyze which kind of requests are increasing, let's say singleton request, and then you can add more replicas, add the metadata, and automatically the replica will be picked up by the routing system and the queries will be sent to the right replica, offloading the primary, for example. So this is something that I will show you in a couple of minutes live. And there are several other benefits I noticed after I finished creating this example. For example, adding or removing replica doesn't require any disconnection because basically my application will just pick up the replica. If there is a new replica available, it will just pick it up without having to disconnect and then reconnect, like when it happened when we do a scale up, right? So it's a little bit more elastic. And also adding and removing a replica thanks to the hyperscale technology is something that can be done in a dozen of seconds. So there is no need to keep replicas around if you don't need them. Maybe you know that you have, a peak in the evening, for example, if you are doing a sports-related application, and you just create the replica when you need, add them to the metadata, your application, your endpoint will actually be able to use those. And then when the peak is gone, you delete the replica and basically being very, very elastic. Costs means also that this elasticity means also that cost can benefit from this ability to create and destroy replicas very quickly. But not only the cost will be your cost will be lowered because you can create and destroy replicas quickly, but also named replicas, so the secondary replicas, the one will only be used for read-only scenario, can have the price aligned with what we call the Azure hybrid benefit, which means that basically you have at least 30% savings, but that can grow as much as 70% savings. So what I want to underline here is that if you create your solution to be able to scale out instead of scale up, you will be having most likely the same performance, if not better, and saving your costs. saving your bill. So keep in mind that the ability to scale out is something you want to start to bake into your application right from the beginning, because it not only provides you the elasticity you need to sustain performances, but also a reduction in costs, right? So that's very important. So let me show you exactly what I'm talking about, and let's go here. So this code will be, and I will have a link later, but it's available on GitHub. You can download, deploy in your solution, in your subscription. And so here I have created a sample shopping cart application. So here we go. So we have a table. Let's start with the table that contains shopping cart, and the shopping cart is saved as a JSON. So actually, let me show it to you. Let's go here, for example. Okay, let's pick some of. Oh, this is empty. Okay, perfect. So let's start. The application. The application, so after having created a database, set up some controller. The shopping cart controller basically manages the get and the put request. And as you can see, each request is very simple. Basically, I just called the query method that is actually derived by the controller query. So let's take a look at this. And the query is very simple because I'm using store a procedure in JSON to take advantage of creating a even simpler architecture. So here I define what is the store procedure I have to call based on the verb it has been used and the entity is being reached. So in this case, the entity is the shopping cart. And so if you do a get from the shopping cart, the store procedure will be API get shopping cart, right? So something similar to that one. Actually, will be something like that. Here we go. Okay, so this is how I dynamically know which kind of store procedure I have to call. And here, and this is the interesting part, here I'm asking to the scale out service which connection string should I get. And the connection string is managed by this iScaleout service, which basically ask this store procedure to be executed every time between every 3.5 to 5.5 seconds. So every, let's say, on average 5 seconds, it gets a refreshed metadata information. And right now my metadata is completely empty. So I don't have anything. So this means that by default, everything will go to the the read-write replica. So let me start. When we get the application, the connection string, basically the trick is done because the controller query has the connection string, and then it can execute the store procedure on that connection string, which will point to the correct database, right, to the correct node. So how do I create some nodes? Let me show. It's very easy. Also, it's here. Let's go. Add named replicas. This is how I can create a new node. So if my primary server is called my server and my database is called NROLTP, to create a replica, the only thing I have to run in the master is just do an alter database, add secondary on server, and specify that I want to create a named replica and the database name I want to create. Once this is done, it usually takes something between 12, 15, 30 seconds at maximum, I will have a new database that will actually see exactly the same data of the primary database, of the primary replica, but it's actually a new database. It's a different database, so I can connect to it. I have a connection string. I can connect it in the portal. So actually, let me show you the portal here. If I go to my server, and you will see, let's refresh. You will see I've already created many of these replicas. So let me go. Okay, seems it's not helping right now, of course. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Found now. And you can see that, for example, this is my primary server, and I have many replicas. I can go here to replicas and see all the replicas I have created. So as you can see, all of these are named replicas. So all of these will see exactly the same data that is managed by the primary server, but each one of those has its own, basically has its own connection string and resource set and everything. So I can click on one and I can manage it like a regular database in the portal. It has a connection string, a dedicated connection string. So I can connect to it like we did, like we discussed at the beginning. So I can I directly connect to this replica. So this is exactly what's happening here, right? So I have created my replicas, and what I can do is add to this metadata table all the replicas I want to use. In this case, I'm starting without any replica. I will only use the primary one. And here I can even specify the tag that I want to use to say what kind of workload that replica should be able to receive. And I have created 3 workloads. Another one is ATL, for example. So if I insert that data into my metadata table, I will have replica 1 and 2 used to do anything that falls under generic read. Replica 3 for answering all the requests or the queries that are tagged with the search tag. And then this, for example, or better, let's do reporting for reporting purposes, right? And how and where do I assign the tag to these queries? Well, in the controller, right? So I go to the shopping cart controller, and you will see here that I'm tagging my query. So when I do a get by package, I decided to tag this query like a tag search, and the same as when I do a search by term. But a simple get is not tagged, so means it's a generic read, and it will go into this replica identified like a generic read. So let me just execute Locust, which is actually also part of the story of the repository. Locust is a very nice application that allows me to run some tests and simulate, for example, 100 users in this case. So I'm doing this mainly because I want to generate some load, so I can then go here, use Insomnia. Let's go and take some of values added. And let's say, for example, I want to have this cart ID here. Now, if I want to get this cart ID, here I will get the data, and here in the header I also showed which kind of replica answered my request. In this case, the primary, right? Because I haven't configured any other replica. So what I can do right now is, and of course I already have created these named replicas, I can add these 2 replicas here so that in my metadata it's clear that these can answer the generic read. Let's also add the search. Okay, fine. Now, in 3 to 5 seconds, the controller will pick up the metadata. And now if I execute this again, I would expect this, since this is a generic, I know it is a GET request and I know it's mapped to a generic read tag. Here I would expect to be answered by replica 1 or 2. Let's see if this is the case. Send. Yeah, here we go. Replica 2 has answered this, and I didn't have to change everything to, disconnect. This is happening in real time. And so if I do this again and again, you see, in this case, the routing mechanism is very simple. It's random, and you can see the details in the scale out, table, or sorry, class. And so this is answering here, and it's perfect. And here, nothing bad happened. The chart is still super stable. So I can add, add stuff, add new replicas. I will have, let's now with the search, let's try with the search. I have a ability to search something. I don't know if I have, actually, let's take something that can exist here. So let me take a shopping cart. Let's take this, for example, and let's search for the term. Okay, for this. As you can see here, everything is generated randomly to simulate a kind of a realistic workload. So let's search this term or this property, and this should be answered. Ouch, something bad happened here. Let's see what's happening. maybe I haven't created. Oh, okay, seems to be good. So not sure exactly what happened. Let's try again. Interesting. Okay. Of course, I tried before and everything was working, and now, okay, demo effect. But the search, which is kind of strange because here, oh yeah, this is all failing. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, something strange happened. Well, that's not a big issue because if you go here in the database, actually here you have all the code. So this is pretty much something we can. Oops, sorry, this one here. So that's that's what happened. Probably something bad happened before. There is no create procedure here for some reason. Okay, that's interesting. Anyway, let's see if I can quickly undo. Yep. So let me create this again, and otherwise no worries in the sense that I guess you got what is going to happen. So what is going to happen is that I would expect here to get the result from, let's see, oh, yeah, this is used. Oh, that's a very bad, that's a very old example. Yeah, no worries then. I changed it, instead of using the like, which is, as you can see, is pretty slow, to use a contains. So that's why I did the change, which that's fine. We can do this right now. And let's do that. Let's correct this live. And so interesting, for example, this would everything here is going to the server number 3, but I'm working on the primary, as you can see, right? Because again, everything is managed by the primary, even the object I created, and everything will be automatically let's say, synchronized with all the other nodes. Actually, there is no synchronization needed because the storage is the same for all the nodes, right? So I just have to do the changes in the primary, and all the other nodes will actually, benefit from it. So this should now be working. Let's see. Oh, finally. And this should come from the service number 3, from the replica number 3, which is exactly happening. So I was just able to say, okay, all my complex search queries should go to the replica number 3, while all the reader queries should go to replica 1 or 2. And of course, instead, all the insert, update, and delete are going to the primary replica. So if I do a put here will be just the primary replica. So this really enables, and as you can see, the code is not that complex, because at the end of the day, the only thing I have to do, instead of just connecting to one connection string, maybe hard-coded in the configuration file, I just have to have a service that gives me the correct connection string. Now, I can make that service more or less complex. In this case, I also wanted to add the ability to route the connection string based on a tag, but that's up to me. And this is what I like about this approach, that I can create even the most complex routing logic, so that, for example, I can split the load coming to my backend API. If it's a mobile, if it's a request coming from a mobile application, I can send it to a set of server. If it's coming from, I don't know, a web application, I can send to another set of server, and so on and so forth. So this really gives you the ability to decide how you want to spread the workload over all your server and have a total control over it, which is great. And so this really give you the ability to completely scale out not only your solution from an application perspective, but also from a database perspective, taking advantage for having better performance and also, as said before, less cost. So, couple of conclusions here. First of all, architect your application so that they can manage more than one database connection string. At least, I would say, one for reading and one for writing. So you can always decide at some point that maybe you want to separate read from writes to make sure that they don't kind of clash with each other. And but even better, you can create, as I just shown, an API layer that knows which nodes are available and for which kind of workload, and then you can orchestrate access to that node, deciding or creating a routing mechanism. So this is the better option. The best option could be even, as I did, to even tag the query. So you can, send or use the tag to send the query to the correct node. Now, what happens if the node, like the search node, is not there? No worries. Actually, let me show it to you. Let's say that we disable the node number 3 in the sense that for any reason we want to say, I don't want to use it anymore. Okay, so that will be disabled in the sense that it's still available in the metadata, but it will not be used by the routing mechanism. What is going to happen is that the shopping cart search ability will be served by another node. In this case, I decided that the fallback node before going to the primary will be the generic read. So this will be served by either the node 2 or the node 1. So you can see it's very also easy and nice to decide what is the fallback criteria. In this case is here, services, scale out. So this is exactly the fallback criteria. I'm trying to get the list of connection string which points to the available node for the tag someone asked. If the tag is not available, then I'm falling back to a generic read. If the generic read is not available, then we will just fall back to basically the read and write connection, which means that we can scale from one node to as many as we want. Because really we can have up to 30 named replicas, which if you think about it, each replica can be 80 vCore, so we can have 1,000 of vCore if we really need to serve a huge amount of requests. What would be the kind of ultra level that you may want to try to explore in your solution, in your company? Well, it would be great if not only we have the replicas available like 24 hours, but maybe we can have a machine learning model that knows when it's very likely that a replica is needed. So it creates the named replica, let's say 1 to 5 minutes before when we expect the peak, add it to the metadata, and then delete it when the peak is done. So that will only means that not only you are improving the performance, but you're also saving cost quite substantially because you will be using the replica only when you actually need it and without any manual intervention. So this means you can really spend a lot, and you are always safe in the sense that if the replica is not there, it will fall back to the generic read or the primary node if nothing else is there. Where is this code? Code is available here on GitHub, or you can access directly GitHub, or you can search in the docs.microsoft.com. Just search for hyperscale or scale out sample, but I have put a link here. It has a detailed explanation on how it works, a sample scenario that you can run to also see what happens if you need to create a new node and redirect the workload to that node because there is a contention on another node, so you need to kind of remove the peak load from some node and move it to another to kind of do a sort of a clever load balancing. But in general, if you're interested in taking advantage of your database in a smart and clever way, so knowing that there is a database behind the scene, not just pretending that is abstracted away, I recommend to go and take a look at the code samples. There are 34 code samples in all languages, .NET, Python, Node, that take advantage of Azure SQL in many ways, using JSON like I'm doing, full text, graph models, of course the scale out, geographical, geospatial queries. So if you're developing backend or full stack solution, this is a huge repository of samples you can take advantage. And with that, I am done. I just have 5 minutes, I guess, to take some question, if there are any.
Wow, Davide, that was very fast session full of demos and some great slides. And I saw you debugging the code right in the demo.
Man, don't know what happened. Maybe I missed it. I typed some text before joining, and I deleted a storage procedure. Anyway, it happens.
Glad you figured it out. But demons are always there. There's a question coming up: is how to achieve orchestration to manage different database nodes. Will this be auto or manual?
Well, in that case, it depends on the code you wrote, right? So that's what I like of this solution. So in general, I like the ability to automatically scale out or load balance. But with all the load balancer I found, they are somehow good for not super complex scenarios. If you want to say, I want that reporting query to go there, so far there is no load balancer that allows you to do that. So basically, the answer is it's in your code, so you decide.
Yeah, okay. Vicky says, thank you, Maurer.
Sure.
Alan says, thank you, Davide.
Cool. Thank you.
Session. So Davide, I have been following you on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and you guys and girls do a lot of data expo show, right?
Yes.
And keep the community updated. So what's new coming up with SQL or anything you'd like to share the insights?
I would love to be able to share as much as I can, but I can't yet. But I can promise you that next year there will be a lot of super interesting stuff around Azure SQL that will make a developer super happy. We are really doubling down on developer experience. Well, on everything, I would say, but developer experience close to my heart. So I'm really focusing into that. And I'm happy to say that we are putting into Azure SQL everything I always have asked for and wished for. So I'm pretty sure that many developers will be super happy in the next year. Unfortunately, we are still working on it. Can't share much, actually, nothing, because in general, still hands down on the code. But I'm pretty sure people will be amazed about what we will be releasing.
No, I mean, I've been looking at the Azure SQL handles and everywhere in the community. You guys and girls, I believe Azure SQL team are the most community driven.
That's true.
They're very active and very, very humble, I would say, very open to anyone who invites them. So that's great that apart from all the other products and services we have, I believe the Azure SQL team is very open to the community, and we really appreciate it.
Yes.
Apart from that, but Davide, anything else you want to add before we end the day 8 of Cloud Summit?
No, but I just want to follow up what you said. So let me thank the community. We had a huge and very interesting discussion with all the Azure MVPs, the SQL MVPs, and it's amazing the feedback they give us. Many of the features we are working on are the direct outcome of that discussion. It takes some time for us to do stuff, but every feedback is heard. And I just want to thank everyone and please keep giving us feedback, because that's what helps us to make sure that we create the product that you want, right? So absolutely, yes.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Davide. It's Monday, I know it's busy day. People have work to do, but still you're taking our time and contributing to the community. Send my regards to all your team members.
Yep, I will.
Most of them.
I'm sure.
All right, David. Have a nice day ahead. And
cool. Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you again.
All right, that was awesome, Davide. And I see some people telling him you love his accent. Yeah. So that was the final session of the day. We have had many sessions around SQL. I cannot believe it. All this Cloud Summit, but we have somewhere around 20 to 25 sessions just on SQL, which definitely tells that people are a lot more inclined learning to SQL, and also there's communities very active to take you to your journey of SQL. And having said that, it's time we go ahead and announce the winners for all the contests that we have had: LinkedIn contest, Twitter contest, and live contest. But before we do that, let's take a quick commercial break and say thanks to our sponsors.
Life in operations. It's a mix of planned and unplanned work. Operators frequently find themselves getting interrupted with an endless stream of tickets, often for doing the same things over and over again, and those tickets are often escalations to yet another team. Resolving these tickets leads ops teams to searching documentation and runbooks, looking for steps to complete routine procedures. Hopefully, the docs are up to date and the operator has access, and they don't make a mistake. And of course, that the business can afford to wait. wouldn't it be great if there was a better way? What the operators really need is their runbooks to be automated. Here's where Rundeck can help. Rundeck by PagerDuty is a leading solution for runbook automation. Customers use Rundeck to delegate automation to the right people in the organization. Now users get self-service access to operations that previously only subject matter experts could perform. Rundeck automates IT workflows and processes, replacing the previously manual procedures found in documentation. Rundeck doesn't replace existing automation. It makes existing automation, scripts, and commands more secure, auditable, and safe to run. Rundeck is a central hub for automation, connecting key tools and infrastructure in operations workflows. Rundeck helps teams resolve incidents quicker, avoid interruptions, and get more done, all while ensuring things are locked down and remain compliant. First responders are empowered to resolve incidents themselves instead of escalating, minimizing disruptions and reducing outage time. Operators become more productive. Developers stay focused. IT users can solve problems for themselves with the click of a button. Rundeck customers regularly see 60% shorter incidents, escalations cut in half, and 15 to 20% increase in productivity. Sign up for a demo today.
Script Runner, the #1 for PowerShell management. We get it. You were hoping that PowerShell would save your day, but you figured out that it is not user-friendly for non-experienced colleagues. Managing the increased demand on IT is a growing challenge, and running scripts manually is still very time-consuming and complex. Welcome to Script Runner, the #1 for PowerShell management. Script Runner runs on PowerShell scripts. It combines everything you need to efficiently manage and automate your complex IT infrastructure. With Script Runner, you'll be able to make it easy for your team to perform administrative tasks without any knowledge of PowerShell, have a transparent overview on all PowerShell activities, and most importantly, free up your IT resources for more relevant tasks such as innovation and development. Download your free trial now and unlock the power of PowerShell.
All right, I am back and it's time to do the giveaways, the time you all are always excited to. Alan says, Simon, how and when will the individual sessions and slides be made available? That's a very good question, Alan. I'm sorry, I'm fumbling. The individual sessions will be made available just after the summit end. The summit ends on 23, and we'll make sure by end of that weekend, that is by Saturday or Sunday, we will edit all the videos and we will send all the video links to you through email. Now, if you have registered, definitely make sure that you are registered. If you have not, please go and register it, and we'll drop you an email just after the summit end. And when it comes to the slides, Alan and everyone, we may not be able to have slides for every session. We are reaching out to all the speakers. We may not be able to have all the session slides because many of our speakers are from Microsoft and they are copyright content. But we'll try to get as many as slides possible and all the links that we share, and we'll make sure that if the slides and any extra other material exist, we put those also in the links. So please give us, the summit ends on 23, and we'll make sure that it ends on 23, that is on Thursday, and on 27 positively all the videos will be sent it to you. So don't worry about it, and yeah, please register. We'll make sure that we send it to you. I hope that answers, Alan. Dimitri says, thank you for another great day with great content. Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who has been joining it. The speakers come in, and you guys and girls drop the comments. It really encourages everyone. Bhaskar, Alan, Dimitri, and I hope I'm saying it the right name, the right way. Vicky and every Ganesh, and everyone who has been joining. Thank you so much. Yeah. Alan says, many thanks, Simon. I know this is massive ask and a piece of work. Have a weekend off. Actually, Alan, I've not had a weekend off from past 18 months. I know that's not a good thing. Forget about weekend. I've not had any day off from past 18 to 19 months. Yeah, I think I need to take a break, maybe sometime. At least I plan to take break around Christmas. I think I should take at least a month off, because 19 months is a long time. So, all right, let's get to the business and see who's going to win the swag kit for the day. Let's see who wins it. Who wins it? We have the swag kit to be given away. And I think, Alan, you have also won Alan, Alex, I think you guys have also won some of the goodies, right? So make sure that you do drop an email. We may not be able to reply emails because there's a little too many emails coming in, but after the summit ends, we'll make sure that we reply all the emails. I believe both Alan and Alex, you both have won something. I'm not sure which day. Okay, so let's see who wins the Cloud Summit swag kit for the day. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Some drum rolls. If there's a new already a winner, we'll have to draw again. Oh wow, Anjali! So congratulations, Anjali. That's great. Where is Anjali? I don't see Anjali's comment. Where is Anjali? Let me find Anjali's comment. Anjali commented on YouTube. I'm just finding Anjali's comment. Where is that? Where is that? I want to show the Anjali's comment. Oh, she said hi everyone, but this doesn't have the tag. Oh, maybe it picked this one. Never mind. My tool is not the best, but at least it works. So yeah. So congratulations, Anjali. Take a screenshot of this and drop us an email at simon@azuresummit.live, and we'll make sure with your contact, with your shipping address and contact number, and we'll make sure that we ship you the goodies. Alex, I don't know, to be honest. I don't remember. We have been doing giveaways, 4 giveaways we do each day. I literally don't remember if it was you, but Alan did win. I'm not 100% about Alex, but I'm sorry, I'll have to go back and check. Maybe I'll try. I announce winners always towards the end of part. Sometimes I also do before the part ends. I'm so sorry. But never mind. Please stick towards the end of the summit, and you never know, you'll win it. Or maybe let's do one for Alex. Let's see if it wins it. Alex has been here for a while. Let's do once again. If he wins it, then it's okay. Okay, if it's not, I'm just being very kind here. Let's see. Alex, finger crossed. Come on, you can win it. Come on, Alex. Come on, Alex. Come on. Oh no, Ganesh has already won it. Never mind. Ganesh has already won it. Okay, let's see now who wins the LinkedIn contest. For the LinkedIn contest, we have Santosh. All right, so Santosh is watching the Cloud Summit with his lovely daughter. I think he's watching a morning session part 1 of Sandro Pereira. So congratulations, Santosh. Take a screenshot of this and drop us an email at simon@azuresummit.live, and we'll make sure that we ship you the goodies. And the winner for the final contest of the day is Alan. Now, is Alan the same Alan? I don't know. Is Alan Florence? Yes, this is Alan Florence. So Alan, I don't know if you have won it, but if you have won it, then you get the goodies only once. Okay, if you have not won it, then you win it today. You have been sharing about sessions, not just today, but also throughout all the days that we have had. Oh, now I cannot find your posts. Oh, don't embarrass me. You posted a lot. Where those tweets went away? Oh my goodness. Ah, are you posting it the wrong way? I see so many images over here. Oh, Alan, here's one thing, Alan. Here's what you should. Alan, here's what we should do, right? Whenever you use a username, right, and if you don't put any character before it, it won't show in your Twitter profile. It would show in tweet reply. So what you can do is you can just add a period, a dot, as if anyone visits here, they cannot see any of your tweets, right? But if we check over here, only then we can see your tweets. Yeah. So Alan, you win it. I see you have been sharing a lot. So yeah, Alan says he's the one. So if you have not won through it, you have won it today. So congratulations. Take a screenshot of this, drop us an email, and we'll make sure drop us an email with shipping address and contact number, and we'll make sure that we ship you the goodies. Thank you so much, Florence. Alan, you have been very, very active. Alan says, "Oh, learn something new." Even I figured this out very, very late. But never mind. All right, everyone. Let me quickly give you an overview. What's tomorrow? I think that's super important. Okay. And you know what? You know what? We have already updated the website with the new day URL. You see how fast we are. We have already updated day 9, September 21, the chat and the embed code. How fast we are. Actually, I did it behind the scene. Okay, so tomorrow is September 21. At my place is already September 21. As always, the welcome note starts at about 6:20. It's a little 10 minutes early than the other day. Then at 6:30, we have Kupusaru. He's going to talk about Azure functions. It's an important topic. Then we have Justin Yo. Justin Yo is a cloud advocate, and he's going to talk about things to know when introducing ALM to your Power Platform. Then we have a session by Thomas and Yannick, the duo, that's going to talk about things to remember. Sure, you can migrate that. I don't know what this actually session is. It says, but migration sounds good. Then we have a panel. This is an absolutely great panel by Richard, Gregor, and Weasley. They're going to talk about app modernization in practice. It's going to be a 50 minutes panel. So definitely watch. Panels are always very interesting. Then we have a session by Annie. She's going to talk about getting started with Kubernetes. She's a Microsoft MVP. Then we have Freck. Freck is going to talk about Azure Virtual Desktop, followed by 10 tips, top 10 Azure cost optimization tips. Maheshchan is the founder of C# Corner. I know all of those guys are awesome. Oh, wow. That's great. Then we have a break. Then part 2 starts Bob Ward. Everyone, please do not miss the session of Bob Ward. Definitely do not miss it. His sessions are the best. He's one of my favorite from the SQL community. And yeah, please don't miss Bob's short session tomorrow at 12:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Then we have a session by Liji, a very small and sweet session of about 20-25 minutes. That's about chatbot using Azure AI. I most probably believe it's going to be the cognitive services and bot framework. Then we have a session on get rid of recurring Azure management tasks with PowerShell in 5 steps. This is one of my sponsors, Heiko Script Runners. So yeah, thanks to our sponsors, Heiko. I'll welcome. He has been very active. Then we have again a session by sponsors, Steve Jonas. He is a DevOps advocate at Redgate. Then a session by Mike. There's so many sessions the other day. Technical program manager at Microsoft, that is introducing Azure Maps developers. This is a very unique session. I don't see many people talking about it. So Azure Maps is a very interesting topic. Not many people talk. So it would be a good session of about 40 minutes. Then the final session we have tomorrow is by Tejas. Tejas works at Netflix. Wow. The first thing that I'm going to ask him is to give me some subscription. I'm kidding, I won't. Upskilling for a multi-cloud world. And then the closing note by me as always. So yes, thanks. That's it for tomorrow. And that's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone. Once again, everyone who's been in the chat, I really appreciate it. It really makes the event successful. That's all from my side, everyone. My name is Stephen Simon, your host as always. I'll see you in about 14 to 15 hours. I believe that's the time, right? In about 14 hours. Take good care of yourself. Enjoy your Monday and see you soon. Bye-bye. Take care. How is the video? Yeah, here's the video.
Hi, I'm Anna Hoffman.
Hey friends, I'm Nikolai.
Hi, I'm Mustafa Turaman.
Hi, I'm Tanya Janka.
Hello.
And I'm excited to be the speaker at Azure Summit 2021.
It's a fantastic event that will be 11 days live streaming,
Where more than 100 speakers from all over the world.
I'm excited to speak at Azure Summit about Power BI and Synapse Analytics.
And I'm going to talk about security.
And also a Microsoft MVP for Azure.
I'm speaking at Cloud Summit about automated release of .NET application.
And the best part is that this is a free event.
Come join me live at Learn TV on September 17th.
Come join me live on Learn TV on September 14th.
Come join me on Learn TV on the 14th of September this year.
A bunch of other Microsoft and community speakers.
So if you want to learn how to secure Azure, come to my talk.
join us. It will be a lot of fun.
See you there.
See you there.
See you there.
See you there.